Welcome to episode 039 of the Bit Beacon broadcast. It's June 17th, 2024.
Ravenheart's here.
Kodak's is here. And let's talk about what we've been buying, playing. Want me to start this week?
Yeah, go for it.
Alright, I have, outside of my usual, like Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, I have just not had time to really play anything.
Yeah.
I'm in this season right now where I've got like so many events going on.
Yep.
Like both personal, like video game stuff, and I got like my work conference coming up.
And not just like in-person events, but so many announcements and stuff going on with...
Oh yeah, I got to spend my free time watching all these like announcement shows.
Making notes.
Yeah, I just haven't really had time to like jump into something new.
Yeah.
So yeah, I picked up one game this last week. You know what Woot is?
Nope.
Okay, Woot is it's like a overstock kind of website where they sell like discounted things.
Like liquidation?
Kinda, yeah.
Gotcha.
But Amazon bought them several years ago.
Oh, okay.
So now they sell a lot of like overstock stuff from Amazon. And they had last year's Assassin's Creed Mirage on sale, and this is like the deluxe edition that has some like extra bonus content, and it was like less than $20, and everywhere else this game is like $40-$50, so I was like, why not? So I picked it up. A little note about Assassin's Creed Mirage is that it was made with the intention to make an old school style Assassin's Creed game, where instead of a big sprawling world, you just have one city that the game is set in.
Yeah.
And this particular game is set in 9th century Baghdad.
Okay.
So
I see it looks kind of Arabic. And
which is kind of throwing it back to like Assassin's Creed roots, which is definitely very much so like in those kinds of settings.
Cool.
So yeah, and it also serves as sort of a prequel to Assassin's Creed Valhalla, because I believe the character of this game is like a side character in Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
So it takes place before Valhalla?
It takes place before Valhalla, and then the character's name is Basim, and he apparently at some point travels to Europe, and then he encounters the Viking guy,
gotcha.
Which I think his name is Eivor, the main character of Valhalla.
Ivor,
that sounds right. I'll probably... Normally I'm the kind of person that likes to play things in order of release, not necessarily chronological order.
I'm the same way.
But I think I might actually play this one first because I've been playing older Assassin's Creed games, and I think it might be kind of confusing to go to like the newer play style and then jump back again to the old play style.
The newer play style being Valhalla, right?
Yeah, Valhalla, Origins, and Odyssey all have kind of their own... starting with Origins, which is the one in Egypt, and then moving to Odyssey and then Valhalla, they kind of have a new take on how the game plays and the combat and things like this.
Right.
Where it's more action-based, and then the older games are a little more about like stealth mechanics and things like that. Where like, if you get yourself into a fight, it's going to be hard because you're not really equipped to...
You're not a soldier.
You're not taking down hordes of enemies. I mean, sure you can, but it's like if you take a hit, like half your health is gone. You got to be careful.
Right. Whereas in like Valhalla, you're like a berserker.
You're like a warrior. Yeah.
Berserker type.
Yeah. I think I'd maybe rather play this first. So we'll see. But again, kind of in a little Assassin's Creed mood. But I do want to play Rogue first, and then maybe Mirage. And then I'll jump. But I mean, I'm talking about like, who knows? I'll probably play one more Assassin's Creed game this year.
Yeah. That's a lot of Assassin's Creed.
Yeah. And the older ones are much shorter. And this one, I guess, is more tailored to that kind of like shorter. But I mean, like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I hear, is like, especially with all the expansion packs and stuff they released for, it's like 100 50 hours worth of content, which is nuts.
I heard the world was big.
Yeah.
Like real big.
Yeah.
Which one was the one on PSP?
It was Vita.
Oh, that's right.
And it was Liberation.
Oh,
it was the one that was set in like Louisiana, when it was like a French colony.
Right.
And that one they eventually ported that to PS3 and PS4 later down the line.
Gotcha.
And I actually replayed that one on PS3.
Okay.
That one stars Aveline.
Right.
Yeah, good game.
Yeah.
And that one blew my mind on the Vita too.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was so much about the Vita that was like,
yeah,
there's an Uncharted game.
Right.
There's an Assassin's Creed game.
I still need to play that. That was Golden Abyss.
Golden Abyss. It's great for what it is. I mean, like.
Well, it was developed by a different team than the.
It was developed by Ben Studio.
Okay.
The people who made like Siphon Filter.
Right.
And after Golden Abyss, they would go on to make Days Gone. The zombie biker game.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy that there's a Uncharted game not developed by Naughty Dog.
Yeah, it's interesting because Naughty Dog, they've never like really. I don't know if they've ever really recognized it too much, like in their own games.
Yeah.
Because it came out between 3 and 4.
Right.
But it's technically the earliest set.
Canonically?
Chronologically.
Right.
And it is considered to be canon. It does Sully's in it, but he's the only other character. Everyone else is like new.
Nathan Drake's not
in it? Oh, no, Nathan and Sully. Nathan Sully.
I'm like, what?
Although I do think...
He's on the cover.
He is, yeah. It's like, oh yes, let me tell you a story about Sully.
And then it just goes into a completely different character.
Although I think a Sully like throwback game would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be.
I know they don't really know what to do with Uncharted right now. I feel like someone else could do something. It doesn't need to be Naughty Dog that makes a new Uncharted game.
Right.
I understand that Naughty Dog probably doesn't. They made 3 big games. 4 big games,
4
excuse
big
me.
Games, yeah.
That they're done. And they kind of had a nice ending, but like technically they did make 5. They made the one starring Chloe. But it wasn't a numbered entry.
Okay, what was it called?
Oh shoot.
Well, what was it on?
PS4.
Okay.
Yeah, it came out. It was originally going to be like an expansion for 4, but it ended up just like blowing up into its own full scale.
Gotcha.
I mean, it was about like probably half the size of Uncharted 4.
Sure.
In scope,
Right. Well, even Uncharted 1 is pretty long.
Yeah. But it did deserve to stand on its own.
Yeah.
I don't know why I can't remember the name of the game.
I was going through my games recently and figured out that I had 3 copies of Uncharted 1. One was the greatest hits.
Okay.
One was the original, and then one was the not for resale copy.
That came bundled with the PS3, right?
And then I had 2 copies of 2. One was, I think, the greatest hits, and then one was the European. I forgot. I have like all these variants of like all the
Japanese. Maybe I mentioned this before. The Japanese covers for the Uncharted games are so nice. They have like these really nice illustrated covers that aren't like like a screenshot. Like just a
generic character.
But like almost like a very like Indiana Jones-esque like poster. You know, like a retro.
Oh, that's
kind of
cool.
got that kind of vibe going on.
That's cool.
But yeah, what about you? You been playing anything?
Yeah, so the only thing I did play this week was I'm in the same kind of boat as you. Like stuff's ramping up in my personal life, and I just summer.
Yeah.
Right. And but I did still play quite a bit of Hades this week.
Okay.
And
you were in love with it last week.
Yeah, I still am.
I think people felt that.
Yeah, it's still amazing, and it's so I got all the way to the 4th area now, which is Styx.
Does that mean you've beat 3 bosses?
Yes, that's correct, yeah. And so the first one was Megara, who's a female, like lesser god.
Okay.
She's not an Olympian god. I forget what they're called. But what's so crazy, I've probably beat her 25 times now at least, and I still haven't seen repeating dialogue. She has something new
really?
to say every single...
Oh, because every time you die, you have to go through all those bosses again.
Exactly. You go back to House of Hades, and then from there you go through Tartarus is the first area. I can't pronounce the name of the second area. And then the third area is Elysium, and then the fourth area is Styx.
Do the bosses, like, recognize that you're back again?
Oh, yeah. 100%. It's fully... Like, I don't know how many lines of dialogue they gave them. I still haven't seen the end of it. And, and the ones that you beat, when you go back to House of Hades, they're there because they died.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. At least Megara is. The second boss is Bone Hydra. And Bone Hydra is basically the Hydra that... Heracles, I'm going to pronounce it right.
Okay.
And his name is actually not Hercules. In original Greek pronunciation. Hercules. Nutty professor. But Heracles is his actual original pronunciation, and that is how they pronounce his name in the game. I did get confirmation from a friend that he's not in the first game.
Oh, okay.
But he is definitely referenced throughout the flavor text and stuff, which I'm happy they acknowledge his existence. But Bone Hydra, the second boss, is the Hydra that Heracles killed, and it is in the molten area. I can't remember. Flagion or something. I can't pronounce it.
It's all right.
And it's a skeleton, but still like a Hydra.
Right.
And so you're on this platform.
Three-headed?
It's got it's 9 heads.
Oh, 9. Okay.
Yeah, because when Heracles kills it, it keeps sprouting heads.
Right.
And I got up to 9 heads. I don't know.
Okay.
So you focus in that battle. You focus on one of the heads, and throughout, you killing it down to certain amounts. The other, it goes invincible or whatever, it got this shield around it, and then the other heads come out around the platform you're standing on, so and they all start
surrounding
it turns into bullet hell type projectiles, and you got to run around. Again, with this game, if you're not using the dash button at all times, you're gonna die.
Okay.
So you're dashing.
I'm guessing the dash gives you a little bit of invulnerability or something. Or iframes, they call it.
Right. Kinda.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're thinking of what's known in game development as Coyote Time, which is a reference to Wile E. Coyote.
Oh, okay.
You know how he runs off a cliff and then stands on the air for a second? That was developed in game development around the 16-bit era. And that is the proper way to do platformers and stuff.
Okay.
Where you actually have a moment off the edge of the platform where the player is able to jump.
Okay.
That was discovered by somebody to be the right way to do it.
I guess what I'm thinking of is in an action game, say Devil May Cry. If you do a perfect dodge, you get sort of this moment of invulnerability where if something else would have hit you at the same time, it doesn't actually hurt you.
During the duration of your dash, you are invincible, but there are, like I talked about last week, there are boons. And the whole game is, your growth and stuff is all about boons.
So you can power up your dash to be better.
You can have, an attack after the dash, a wave that happens. You can have a wave effect before the dash.
Is there stamina? Or can you just dash infinitely?
You can dash infinitely, but the amount of time between dashes can vary depending on what boons you have. And there is stamina for your cast. But so you're dashing around this platform, taking out the heads, and then once you take out the other heads, the first one becomes not invincible anymore, and that's kind of how that battle plays out. And then from Flagion, whatever, to Elysium, the transition in environment is... Tartarus is this dungeon, temple type environment. Flagion is this molten lava everywhere. Sucks. You just, especially with your dashing around, and there's all these bridges and little platforms everywhere surrounded by molten lava. you dash right onto the lava.
Oh, and you hurt yourself?
Yeah, a lot.
Oh, okay.
And then Elysium is this sort of a grassland, sort of a mythical forest grove type setting, with ruins and stuff. And probably my favorite environment visually.
Okay.
And the boss for that one is Theseus and Astrius.
Okay.
Who's a minotaur and a Greek king, like Greek hero, Theseus. And so you have to fight them together in this Colosseum.
Okay.
Like a gladiator Colosseum.
That's cool.
And I went the first time and
simultaneously.
Yeah,
2v1.
Yeah, 2v1. And so the first time I went, ended up dying. The second time I got back to Elysium, I met the Minotaur like halfway through, and he just like confronts you, and he's like, "Yeah, that wasn't a fair fight. So what?" And then I'm gonna test you now.
Okay.
And then see if you're even worth Theseus's time.
Okay.
And then I got him down to like a sliver of health, but didn't kill him. And then the battle just stops, and there's more dialogue, and he tells you he respects you and stuff, and then walks off. and I'm like, this is new. Like, this didn't happen on my first time being here. And I'm like, wow, this game is really
so it's like it finds a way to surprise you.
Yeah.
Like if you had beaten them on your first try.
Right. I never would have seen that. Or maybe if I come back through. Like, cause
maybe eventually.
I think even after you escape, my theory is that even after you escape, you come back through.
Right.
So, something happens at the end that changes the whole goalpost or something.
Okay.
And I think you do still, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was like a total surprise. And I'm like, yeah, if I beat them the first time, would I have seen this?
Right.
And so I got back to the Colosseum, and both were there, but Theseus was talking a bunch of trash, and then the Minotaur was just silent. And it like...
Interesting.
Yeah, it was just this weird dynamic thing. And then I fought and I won.
Okay.
And then I made it to Styx.
Okay.
And I made it to Styx with all of my resurrection boons still intact. I hadn't wasted anything. I had a boon on me that allowed me to resurrect in each chamber once instead of just... There's a boon it allows you to resurrect once and fills up your health. But then there's this other one I got where it resurrects. You could do it one time per chamber, but you're left with like 10%.
Oh,
like,
okay.
So I went with that one. And then I had other boons for proper healing. And that was my strategy.
Okay.
And I had everything still intact. And then on top of that, I had like a one full resurrection. So I got to Styx, all proud of myself. And I'm like, yeah, I got everything still intact. I'm going to beat the game right now.
Yeah.
And Cerberus was blocking my path.
Okay.
And the game makes it look like you're going to fight Cerberus.
Okay.
Now, Cerberus, you see every time you go back to House of Hades. He's right there.
Right.
You give him gifts. You pet him.
Yeah.
He's your dog.
Yeah.
Right? You're the son of Hades. And so that's like your dog. And then it makes it look like it's come to this, you know. And then like Zagreus does this little wink and he's like, just, I'm not serious, you know, stand off, boy. And then Cerberus just does.
Oh, okay.
And so it like throws you like this like false battle.
Right.
And then I end up going to the side because Styx starts with this giant bridge, which I think is iconic. I think that bridge actually has a name. And that's where Cerberus like meets people.
It's like where he guards.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I go off to the side through these rooms, and now there's these giant vermin that are filled with green poison in their bodies, and they're like it's like secreting through their fur. And this other new enemy type called satyr cultists.
Okay.
That are like satyrs and they're like cultists. I don't know. So the amount of health and hits that these enemies are taking is ridiculous from just the last area I was in. I'm dashing around the room for like 5 minutes just to kill one. And I'm like, I can't do this. And then every time you kill one of these giant vermin, They leave this big old pool of poison on the ground. And you're poisoned, and there's like no healing from it. Oh, shoot. So I'm like, your health is just draining the whole time. And I ended up just getting slaughtered in like these first few rooms.
And by the trash mobs.
Just went through like all of my resurrection boons.
Wow.
Like just gone.
So what do you think the game is trying to tell you? Because this must be intentional.
Yeah, so the only way I see myself getting through this is with some immunity to poison type boon or something coming up. So
but I mean, aren't you gonna need immunity to poison every time you play
that part? I don't know. Yeah. Like I don't know how it's gonna. And things change. It looks like
right.
But also, when I got back, now I had unlocked all the weapons, and now I could use these vials of Titan's blood. That I was able to gather a couple, and they're super rare. And you use those to like go through your weapons like growth chain, and there's 8 or 6 different weapons. Yeah, 6. There's a sword, a spear, a shield, sword, spear, shield, bow, knuckles, and a gun. And so each one has like their own chain of like growth that you can only like go through with like this Titan's blood stuff that you get 6 vials from beating Megara with each weapon, but then that's it. Like you don't get any more from her. And there's other ways at the like when you get to Styx, there's a shop and it's like 1,200 some ridiculous amount of gold, and then you can find them on rare occasions from like the bazaar in House of Hades. They're really hard to find, but yeah, you're gonna use them on your weapons. Okay. And then they also have like really high sell value, so it's really tempting to sell them, especially with some of the other stuff you can get. So there's that, and maybe I can get immunity through poison or for poison through that. I don't know where the game's going to go from here. But yeah, I got to Styx. So I beat the first 3 bosses.
Nice.
Got those entries in my codex. So I love the codex. Like, all the flavor text is just great. I love it. It's all playing into Greek mythology, and it all references characters in Greek mythology that aren't even in the game.
Right.
And
It must make you wonder. I mean, you haven't finished the first game yet, but I'm sure you're already thinking about there's a sequel coming.
Right. Know? And my friend who's a listener who turned me on to this game is Justin. Hi, Justin. He's telling me, he's kind of teasing me a little bit about the second one, but not giving me any spoilers. He knows that I hate spoilers. Yeah. But even though I really want to know, you know, when you meet Heracles and stuff. But
do you know if there's a different main character for the second game?
I believe it's Zagreus still.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. When anything I've seen of the second one showed someone that looked exactly like Zagreus. So I could be wrong.
Maybe he's a boss now, or
that'd be crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. The dynamic between Zagreus and Hades is just every time you die and come home, you get a big old talking to.
Yeah. Because
you're basically trying to escape Hades' realm.
Yeah.
And so he's talking, you know, like
his father-son thing.
Yeah, but like the voice acting and the dialogue, again with the writing, is just incredible. I can't get enough of this game. Like, it's everything else. You know, I love the gameplay, but it's everything else that just I can't just makes me drool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, so Hades.
Yeah, Supergiant. They are incredible.
They're so
developers.
good.
Yeah.
They are good developers.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna talk about an event I was at last week or this past weekend.
Real quick.
Oh yeah,
sorry.
Go for
Before we move on, I didn't talk about what I've been buying.
Oh yeah.
So I picked up a lot this past week of about. I was told it was almost 100 games, but it's closer to 60 games.
Okay. Did you talk down the price?
The dude exaggerated. Not really.
No.
It was dirt cheap anyways.
Okay.
It was $200.
Okay.
And so these are all PS4 and PS3 titles.
Oh, okay.
So I'm down to buy that.
Did you get like a little bit of a you see anything in there that was particularly interesting?
The only thing I can remember, and I haven't gone through the boxes yet. Next week I'll have more of a list of at least highlights.
Okay.
But I did see the Crash Bandicoot racing game on PS2.
Okay.
Okay.
I
forgot what it's called.
Nitro?
Crash Nitro. Yeah, I think that's it. So that should be cool.
Okay.
Yeah, there's more to come with that.
Okay.
So I got these 2 full boxes.
We'll prepare ourselves for
another
epic segment.
Big old long. Yeah.
Okay, you good?
I don't know if I'm gonna do every single game yet.
Okay. Well, you maybe spare us the sports games.
Yeah.
I mean, unless there's that GameCube NCAA.
Yeah. Oh. The rarest game on GameCube is a college basketball game.
College basketball, that's what it is. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay, so I went to an event this past weekend
at
Gallery Nucleus. Now, speaking of which, we have an event coming up this weekend.
What day?
Saturday.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll see.
We should be good.
Okay. Also at Gallery Nucleus.
Yep.
But we'll talk about that next week. But I was at the Art of Sky, and this is Sky is a game made by That Game Company.
Oh yeah.
It's their follow-up to Journey.
Yeah.
In a way.
You had talked about.
We talked about it prior.
Remind me? Was this live service or something like that?
It originally launched on mobile, then on Switch and PS4, and I think right now it's in beta on PC.
Okay.
But yes, this is a free-to-play game.
Mm-hmm.
I was at their panel at WonderCon earlier this year, and I kind of asked them about
I remember
the live service elements and what they thought about preserving the game and that kind of a thing.
Have you played the game?
I did. I played it briefly on PS4 when it launched.
Does it feel like That Game Company?
It does. Yeah, it does. Visually, and it very much feels like an evolution of Journey.
Okay.
In a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. But it does have more. I mean, Journey, was this game that sort of had this sort of secret multiplayer thing.
Yeah.
Right. I guess you could say. This one is a little more obvious about that because you see that the characters are called Sky Kids, and so you see the other Sky Kids running and jumping and flying around and gliding and stuff. But it definitely still has that vibe where there's no text,
no UI.
It's telling a story just through visuals and sounds and things like that. Right. And it does have that sort of emotional sort of feeling to it as well.
Okay.
But yeah, there's cosmetics and things because it is a live service kind of game.
Makes sense.
So I won't rehash what Sky is because we talked about it earlier this year. But the panel was it was the same people that were at the panel, except for a different community manager, and then I think it was the lead 3D artist for the game instead of a junior 3D artist or something like that. I don't know if the person at WonderCon was junior, but it was not the lead.
Right.
Right. And so I actually have a list of the names of everyone. Okay, so it was Yue Tanabe, who's the visual development lead. It was Cecil Kim, the art director. It was Jenny Kong, the narrative writer. And then the new person was Reika Yoshino. And she's the lead 3D artist.
Were any of those people present on the past games?
My understanding is no. In my research, I know that Jenny Kong is in the special thanks for Journey, but all these other people, no.
Gotcha.
My understanding is that after Journey, the leadership of That Game Company kind of broke up.
Right.
Genova Chen, the main creator behind That Game Company, he stayed on board and sort of basically rebuilt That Game Company.
Yeah.
And I know that this game has I think they said something more than 15 million players worldwide at this point.
Wow.
So it's big.
Yeah.
And mostly at the event, men were definitely more in the minority for sure. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of women, female fans.
Yeah, their style I could see appealing.
I think it lends itself, towards being pretty accessible, you know,
right.
and not needing like hardcore gamer skills.
Right. And it's this might come off wrong, but it's also like simpler, like complexity wise, you know, it's not so involved.
Sure.
Where you have to have tons of experience playing games.
Yeah. So it's definitely accessible.
Right.
And, you know, visually it's, you know, not off-putting.
Right.
It's like quite beautiful.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense to me that it would be, and you know, I think it being on mobile too, also a lot of Gen Z.
Yeah.
Playing this game too. Like I noticed people who are clearly they're like early to mid 20s playing this game.
It's definitely a modern, postmodern style, you know, approach to games.
The panel was really nice. It did start a little late, but it was an hour and a half long, so they talked about a lot and they took some good questions from the audience, and then it switched over to the signing. Mm-hmm. And this was basically a launch of their making of Sky book. It's described as an art book, but how they talked about the book is that Jenny Kong, she kind of wrote like a narrative of like the development of the game, because she was there at the beginning of the development of Sky. Yeah. So they talk about like all the different, like they say they made like 7-8 different games before landing on the version of Sky that like ultimately stuck. Gotcha. And so they talk about all the ups and downs of development, and how she said that she was shocked how like honest they are in the book about like the downs and, you know, like the realities of like the stuff that didn't work out and how rough things got. And
that's cool. I love development memoirs.
Yeah. So I think it is, you know, I mean, it is an art book because it's got a lot of art for like concepts that never made it into the game, right. Like radically different versions of Sky that like don't exist. So it's not like an art book for the version of Sky that exists and made it to market. It's an art book for everything that was Sky.
It's more of a historical piece.
Yeah. So it's cool because it's labeled like 20. It's like 20. It's like the art of Sky, and it says like 20. Like 12 to 2019 or something like that. Gotcha. I think they said it took 7 years to make the game.
Makes sense.
And so I will say one of the most premium art books I've, you know, seen. It's really nice. It was really expensive. So, like, I don't even want to talk about how expensive it was.
You have to now.
I had no intention of buying it. I was hoping they would be selling like prints or something and I could get a print signed. Yeah. But then it became clear that
that's not the that's
all they had with them.
All right, how much was it? Just
$125.
Wow.
Yeah. And it came with a set of 3 prints and a set of like 5x7 like postcards. Okay. As like a bonus.
To kind of justify the price.
Yeah, and like they said that like, you know, normally when a video game company has an art book made, they take all the assets and everything and they send it off to like Dark Horse or one of these publishers or whatever, and they let them do the layout, and then they like see the layout and kind of tell them what to move around, and then they like insert little things about each piece or whatever, right? But I guess this art book, instead of doing that, I guess Genova Chen told art director Cecil Kim, no, I want you to do this. Like, I want you to do this 100% in-house.
I can't imagine just sending it off.
Apparently,
write our book.
That's
what?
Apparently, a lot of art books aren't really this. You know, right. A lot of art books are just pages of concept art and then, you know, little blurbs. You know, like
even that.
Apparently, that's standard in the industry. So I guess it took a very long time for this art book. Like, they took pre-orders like a long time ago, and like they're just now like they apologized so many times during the presentation for like, we're sorry it's taken so long. We know a lot of you have been waiting for this a really long time. And I was like, apologize to me for making me
Hey.
feel like I had to
apologize for the price.
I will say it did. There's like that game company. I love them, but there is a little bit of pretentiousness.
Yeah, they are very artsy fartsy.
Yes, 100% artsy fartsy.
You can get it from just their games.
Yeah,
you can really kind of tell.
You can, yeah. Like even when they're speaking, sometimes it's. I will say the most like human of the bunch was the 3D artist Reika Yoshino. Mm-hmm. She felt the most like personable when she was talking, and like she made the audience like laugh, and she was a little more like real with like, you know, like how tough it is. Like their pipeline, I guess, was like really messy.
Yeah.
Like especially because once the game went live, they switched over to like making these like seasonal kinds of updates for the game.
Yeah.
And then like that seasonal stuff would go, and then the new seasonal stuff would come out.
Right. Live service.
Pretty standard live service fare. But I guess they had a really rough time adjusting to that because that game company had never done something to that. Yeah. So like the artist, like the 3D artist she was just talking about like whenever we got something, we would just start working on it, you know, like they give us a piece of artwork that they approved, we would just start making it, you know, like, but then like a week later they'd be told, no, they're not doing that anymore. You know?
That sucks.
And so it was like, you know, she talked about how that was like, it was really tough for a long time, and that they finally, like in the more like last year and a half or so, they've gotten like into a good like cycle of like how to do this well.
Right. That has to do with all teams, you know, getting together with like their process, because the design team that's approving these artworks needs to be more, you know, careful with what they put through, because the artists, the developers are gonna start jumping on it, you know. And that sucks when you get a piece of art that you did, like you personally as an animator or whatever, that gets pulled from the game. It's like, great, I had a part in this movie and now it got cut, basically. But if you think, when you're just talking about the pretentiousness and stuff, if you think about, or you understand the history of that game company, when they started out with Flower and Flow, like they were a very indie. Yeah. They were on the cusp of like the beginning of the indie.
Yeah, the boom.
Yeah. And so they came up from nothing with a very unique gameplay style. Yeah. And then moved into, I don't know if you'd call it more prestigious, but definitely, you know, bigger, more premier, I guess, with Journey, and got a lot of success and recognition from that, awards and stuff. So I can you can very well see how the room for pretentiousness.
It's interesting though, because none of these people were here for Journey, really.
Right. Yeah,
like, they've all come after.
That's a good point. It might just be lasting cultural.
I think it is like a cultural thing. Like, we are that game company.
There's nothing like us.
Yeah, I mean, and they're not necessarily wrong about that.
No, they're not.
But like, I mean, it is maybe an earned pretentiousness.
Yeah, I mean,
I really don't. I hate to use that word because it feels like I'm being like.
I don't think pretentiousness is justified, no matter what, even if you're Kojima.
But yeah, it's like, you know, of course they didn't do an art book the traditional way. They did it the hard artisan way.
And they're happy to tell you about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it shows, like, it is like a very premium, nice book. Right. Like, and it's like got a really nice binding to it, you know? Mm-hmm. It's not like glued in there like a lot of art books are. Right. So, I mean, and it's like, it was like printed in Japan on like special paper, and you know, like I actually got a picture of the label on the box that they were pulling all the books out of, like the shipping like thing. So, you know, I like to get that. Yeah. Like when I'm at like the Pokemon events, I'm always taking picture like Pokemon Go.
We've done that before at events.
Like, I'll get a picture.
For listeners, what we're talking about is when they're moving merchandise in at an event like books or games or anything else, really, the shipping boxes that they usually have stacked somewhere within view, we tend to take photos of the shipping label,
Right.
So that we have like the sender's
it's got like the manufacturer on it and the address it was sent to, the address of origin.
Yeah, exactly. So that it helps us keep tabs on the big global network of the games industry.
We're crazy, dude.
We're crazy.
So yeah, I did make sure to get a picture of that, and like most of the label was in Japanese.
Yeah,
so
of course.
Like, they went like the extra mile.
They got to print it on some papyrus or some crazy. Yeah, that's a little much.
Yeah.
I appreciate the format of the book.
Right.
Yeah, I think that if I was to do something like that, I would see myself doing it something similar to that. But I don't know if I'd get it printed on Japanese papyrus and special hand bound with special indigenous spider silk or something like I'm not like that.
Right. Well, that game company is that way.
Yeah, right.
I mean, and it's a nice product that will stand the test of time.
Sure.
It's not going to fall apart.
Right.
Like
you are paying for the quality.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's like it's hard to justify, and it's impossible to justify spending $5,000 on a Louis Vuitton bag.
Right.
But if you did, you would find that bag will last.
Yeah.
And sounds like what you did, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to get it, but then... So they didn't sell it at the event. They had a QR code where you could go on the website and select Gallery Nucleus as the pickup location. Gallery Nucleus wasn't selling the book.
Right.
That game company was selling the book through their web shop.
Right.
And they had PayPal as a checkout option.
Mm-hmm.
And PayPal has a thing where if it's over $100, you can pay for it over the course of 6 months with no interest.
Oh, like a layaway kind of deal?
Kinda, yeah. So it's like, I was like, well, okay, it'll just cost me $30 a month for like 4 months, and then I'll have it paid off.
That's a good way to do it.
Yeah, because I was like, if I had to just like pull out 130 out of my, because I'm someone who keeps like a really tight monthly budget.
Yeah.
So like there was no way I was gonna make 130 work. Because after tax it was like 134 or something like that.
You had to finance this book.
I basically did, yeah. Which is like, and it's crazy because I've been wanting to pick up a few games at limited run.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now I'm like,
yeah,
I don't think I'm doing that anymore. I got the book instead.
That stinks.
So yeah, I got the book signed, and then I got one of the prints signed, and then there were some other devs that were in the audience, so I had them sign the print.
Gotcha.
There were more devs that were there during the presentation portion. They were all standing in the back. And then when the presentation finished, they switched over to like a demo with one of the artists who wasn't on the stage, but like kind of went up to the stage and did like a live demo of how they design like cosmetics and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
On like Photoshop.
Right.
And then, but I saw like the devs that were on stage go and like hang out with their coworkers in the back corner, but they were like telling people, don't leave your seats, you know, we're switching over to the signing in like 10 minutes, And so then by the time the signing finished, or by the time I got my signing done, I went to go like try to find the people that I saw, but
they're gone.
Nowhere to be found.
They told you to stay in your seats just so you don't go bug them.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I mean, it was a crowded, like standing room only. Like the seats were like, the event sold out.
Right.
Yeah, like
that makes sense.
I haven't seen a Gallery Nucleus event that full in a long time. And then
I think Naughty Dog was pretty heavy.
Oh yeah, well yeah, that one was full.
Yeah.
But like this was like they let more people in, but like they just all had to stand at the back.
You're right. Did they rotate people or?
So how they did the signing was they just like one row at a time, based on where you were sitting. You would go do the signing, and then they kind of just like made you leave, sort of, but not really.
Were they selling artwork, like originals?
So they had they weren't selling prints like they normally do, where they sell like numbered print, like we're doing 40 of these, 50 of these, whatever.
Yeah.
What they did was they had a kind of a rolling gallery thing that they pushed out after the chairs cleared.
Yeah.
And it had a bunch of like one of one prints of like digital artwork.
Okay.
And they were all like $125 to like $250, and all the money they said was going to Doctors Without Borders or something like that.
Okay.
So it was like for charity. If I hadn't have bought the art book, if I had known that they were selling like 1-of-1 art,
Mm-hmm.
I probably would have bought a print instead, I think, maybe.
Were there any original sketches, or is it all digital?
I think it was all digital.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. So it's like, I'm kind of like if I'm going to buy artwork, I would prefer it to be...
Oh, who wouldn't?
Physical,
right.
Like hand...
Yeah, hand on, like
paper.
graphite on parchment.
Yeah, rather than like, oh, we're just going to print this out.
Right.
But because otherwise, like, I don't want to pay more than like $40 for that, you know, for like a digital print.
Right.
Even if it does on really nice paper and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I didn't get any of that.
Mm-hmm.
But cool that they did have that. But it was sort of a surprise, and I was kind of annoyed because I would have probably bought one of the prints because it's like it would have came with like a huge frame and everything, you know.
Right.
But oh well.
Got your book.
I got my book, which I'm still happy with.
Right. It sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I wish I had one. I'd read
a nice
it.
book. They also gave out some goodies too. They gave out like a sticker sheet for Sky, and then they gave out these little like fabric cinch bags that have like Sky. What do you call it when like sewing is done on like?
Oh, like embroidered?
Kind of embroidered, yeah, like embroidered into the shirt, and then there was like some pins and different little things inside the bag.
Gotcha.
So got some Sky merch. There is no physical game to buy of Sky.
Right.
So,
which is why I don't
get
involved that much. It's sad. And I've our listener Justin, who I already mentioned, had a conversation with me about live service, and he was kind of asking what is live service, basically, like how do you define it? And
Fortnite.
Yeah, basically seasonal, changing content, and no physical game. Lives on another server. Basically, if you're not running the game, you know, it's probably live service.
Yeah.
And this is, you know, I could be super pretentious or super provocative and say it's not a real game, you know. But from a collector standpoint, it doesn't really warrant your investment because there's nothing to collect.
I did bring that up to them at the WonderCon panel,
right?
And they said that they were like, they see these like physical editions, and it is something that they've like thought about, but they didn't have anything concrete to announce,
right?
So they specifically mentioned Fangamer as being someone who does those kinds of things with indie titles.
Right.
So I don't know, maybe you could read into that as sort of a hint that they're maybe thinking of partnering with Fangamer to do some merch and a physical copy of the game at some point.
You had also mentioned when you talked about that panel that you kind of got the feeling that they weren't thinking about posterity. They weren't thinking about preservation.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not a thought that occurred to them.
I asked them, like, how do you, like, it being a live service game, do you think about this game ending and how do you preserve it, you know?
Right.
And Cecil Kim, the game's art
like,
director, was like, this, like, we don't think about it ending. We think about Sky being around 300 years from now.
Right, being live.
Yeah.
Right.
So... I don't know. I do wonder how many devs think about preservation. Like, or is it an afterthought to more of them?
It raises that question.
Yeah.
Like, your encounter, I think, raises that question. And I'm not sure. And I think it does vary, and I think it does depend on the developer.
But yeah, I have, like, a feeling that, like, most of them, like, don't care.
I think a lot of small indies, especially solo devs, do.
Okay. I think it's a big deal for them when their game becomes real.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's why they all flock to Limited Run and East Asia stuff.
Yeah. Where, they do get their games. But I don't know. Maybe some of these bigger games, it just doesn't...
The big studios with big publishers behind them, it seems like a different attitude, different outlook.
I mean, Journey, Flower, and Flow all got released on a
single disc.
Together. So I don't know if, like, Genova Chen was like, hey, Sony... You know, can we do that?
Right.
Or if, like, Sony was just like, we're doing that, you know?
Right.
So I don't know if it's important to him.
Well, Journey was an exclusive, right?
For the longest time,
okay.
It was.
And so that might have had something to do with how Sony might have come in and said.
I think they started doing this thing where they would release PlayStation they had like a special name for these like collections of like digital only titles that they would like put out on like physical copies. It was like PlayStation Store Collection Volume 1
I
or
remember
something like
seeing that kind of stuff.
But yeah, anyways, great event. They did a good job, and you know, check out that art book if you got those deep pockets.
Yeah, that's some crazy.
It's nice.
Can you still get it, or is it?
Yeah, you can pre-order it on their website still.
Gotcha.
I saw people online complaining who have been like, I've been waiting for my art book for more than a year, and these people are getting it today.
Yeah.
And someone was like, it's going to be more valuable. Theirs is going to be more valuable because it's going to have the signatures in it. You know, like people were like upset, you know. So I think that's why they were so apologetic at the event, because they knew that this art book has kind of been, in that regard, but like at the same time, like, because I just walked up, I had never pre-ordered it. I just bought it, and I still got all the extra bonuses that they were like promising,
and all the autographs that everyone else didn't.
But I mean, they're like based in LA, you know. Like,
that's true.
I always see these people like, come to the East Coast, you have fans here, and it's like, do you know what kind of an undertaking that is? They all have to travel.
That's
kind of like.
They can do it here because they live here.
Yeah, like that's the only reason it's happening to begin with.
Right.
It does. It's one of those things that does make me it makes me grateful to live in California, because there are all of these kinds of things, but at the same time, it almost feels like it can be annoying because you feel obligated. Like you get a little bit of FOMO, like if you miss out on it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, like. You have the luxury of being nearby, which everyone else around the world doesn't, and you can't not go. Yeah,
and if you don't go, you end up regretting it. You know, and But then if you do go to everything, you get worn out.
Right.
You know, you're just kind of like, oh my God, can this be over?
Right.
That's what this month and next month feels like for me.
It kind of does stink how so many events are just piled together in the same few months.
I mean, and it's kind of, like June and July. And like Gallery Nucleus has kind of been on fire this year. Like they've just been doing like one event after another in recent months.
They're doing good.
Yeah, like, which I appreciate. Yeah. Because there was like a little bit of a dry spell for a while where they weren't doing.
We were worried about their existence after the lockdown.
It doesn't seem to be a problem anymore. Fingers crossed.
I Am 8-Bit is no longer a physical place.
That's true. They're gone.
But at least we have Gallery Nucleus. Yep. All right, let's move on.
Okay, so we've got a different format for how we're doing our stories this week. But
hold up.
Oh no! Yep, I am jumping ahead. Rick's got something for us.
Yeah. So, Seraphim Weekly update. I'm been continuing with what I talked about last week, with combing through folders and doing the assets, like getting the right versions, getting everything else out into like a deprecated folder or obsolete folder, and to avoid errors where I'm, missing the last few keyframes of a 3D file and then wondering why it's not working, and enacting the labor of like investigating that,
right?
So to avoid problems and avoid time wasted in the future, I'm going through and doing just a reorganization of all my folder system for the project. Aside from that, my girlfriend had a procedure, and I have that preoccupying me right now. And that's something I want to talk about today. And this might seem like I'm trying to turn a nothing burger into a something burger, but this is actually something really important. Who I've listened to certain video game developer life coaches talk about, ones that I like. My favorite is Rick Davidson from PopCap Games. I listen to him a lot. Anytime he does put out a new video, I always pay attention to him. And that's knowing what is and isn't more important than your creative project. And that's sounds easy. Like that sounds
obvious.
Yeah, it sounds obvious to figure out. But when you're actually in there and you don't have the peripheral vision, and you have the rose-tinted glasses and the tunnel vision, it's very easy to, just like not being able to see your own flaws. You know, it's very easy to get lost in this is all that matters right now, and you know everything else is secondary, is taking time away from it.
Right.
When in reality, you have other obligations, you have family, you have friends, you have, you know, people who need you. You know, and as a solo developer especially, I think you're susceptible to really getting lost because you don't have someone there pulling you out.
Well, it probably feels like your game is the answer
to every problem I have.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like if I'm not working on the game, then like I'm making the problems last longer.
Right. That is, you're right.
But if you're only focused on the game, you're probably like making a bunch of problems for yourself
you're
too.
You're making problems worse. And the reason I wanted to another reason I wanted to talk about this so much today was because I have done this before. I have fallen into this trap and had it bite me, you know, pretty badly in the past. My car got repossessed at one point in the past, which I got it out and it's now paid off. But like I let things really go.
Yeah.
And it's because of that tunnel vision. It's because of not keeping a proper perspective on what is and isn't more important than your creative project. And right now, you know, my girlfriend had a procedure that I'm not going to get into it on the podcast, but she's needing my, you know, basically my attention.
While she's recovering, you got to help her.
Right. I got to help her do pretty much everything. And that is more important than my creative project.
Right.
And life is just that way. And again, if you're single and you have no responsibilities and you're living at home and you get everything's paid for and like you get to pocket your paychecks, you probably are in a much better situation to do something like this than someone who does have those responsibilities. But for someone who does, like, this is very crucial. It will destroy you if you don't adhere to what is, you know, getting your priorities right. So that's my update. Good luck to all the solo devs out there. And I hope my advice and experience helps someone.
Yeah, that sounds... I mean, you learned a lot of lessons over the course of Seraphim's development.
10 years.
Yeah. Life lessons.
Yeah.
Like lessons maybe you wish you didn't have to have learned.
What I can say with complete confidence as a guarantee is that no future game project is going to go this way.
Yeah.
Like this, it'll never be like this again. So game number 2 is going to have a very set development cycle. I'm going to know exactly how long it's going to take before I start development. And I'm going to know where I'm going to be at for each month of that period. You know, it's going to be a lot different than this. Part of my problem has also been not having a release date, not having a set deadline, or having any time I do set one.
Haven't there? Yeah, there have been deadlines. It gets scooted. Yeah.
You know? But yeah.
Okay, talk about that a little bit. What is it like to have set a deadline for yourself? And then like you almost like you've announced like release years before for this game.
Yeah, it's basically and see, that's not specific enough if you are really serious about your deadline. But I don't think I ever really did take one seriously enough. Because I always kind of did feel like there's a lot more that needs to be done here.
Yeah.
It's just it's not even close. Like, I don't know. I think a lot of my deadlines were just hopeful and not committed. If that makes sense.
So like you weren't sure.
With the Vita thing, that's the exception to what I'm saying. That I was actually really trying to actually push a product out the door by a certain date.
Yeah.
But the rest of it, like, I don't know. Setting a release year for yourself doesn't work. Like, I don't recommend that. It doesn't work.
Because it almost makes it feel so far away. Yeah. Like, let's say
I have all this whole year to get it done.
It's 2015, and you've announced that your game's coming out in 2016.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, that's like almost 2 years.
I got plenty of time. Yeah.
And then before you know it, 2015's over.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh shoot, well I got a year.
Even before that,
yeah,
you're kind of like, you reach a point where there's no, even if you buckled down every single day, it still wouldn't be done by the end of the year. So even before the year's over, you already know you missed it.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, it's irresponsible. It's rookie stuff.
Yeah.
Really. I need to get through my first game.
Yeah.
And then I'll just know how to do it so much better.
Right. You won't have, you got to avoid the sophomore slump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
You know, honestly, maybe this whole first game is like all of those cliches sort of like packaged into one game.
So going back to game designer life coach Rick Davidson of PopCap Games, he says that for a developer, your first game is going to not fail, but it's just gonna be your first game.
It's gonna be that's a good way to put it.
And then your second game is gonna be similar but better. You're gonna have a much better sense going into it, but it's also going to not make your career.
Okay.
And then your third game is gonna be the one that like forms you as a game development studio. Like that's gonna be the one where that actually like the mold is set.
Right. You've been refined.
Right. So I think about it that way.
Okay.
I do hope that my first game, with the amount of investment I have in it, it does see a little bit more return, I guess, than like your typical first game for like your Switch.io developer or itch.io developer.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously there are tremendous games available on itch.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of like 30-minute experiences on itch.
2 to 5 minute experiences.
They're like
stuff.
More proof of concept than like
they're and they need to exist, and you know we're not knocking those games.
Oh no!
But what those are people's first. They need to get something done and release it.
Yeah.
To move on to the next phase of their development career.
I mean, do you look at you don't look at the PS Mobile version of Seraphim as your first game, do you?
I don't.
Okay.
I see that. This is going to be a crude, maybe I shouldn't even say it, but this will probably be more of a crude analogy. I see it as more of like my teenage abortion. Yeah. That's how I actually see it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I think we know this week's episode title.
Let's not, dude.
Okay, yeah, I'm joking.
We'll get flagged. But yeah, that is actually like, I maybe not so much now, but I think 10 years from now, I'll be feeling that way more. Like that's
really.
Yeah.
See, I look back on it. I look back on like that year so fondly.
Yeah.
And it stings a little bit to see that you don't feel that way about it.
I mean, a part of me, I guess, is proud to have put something on PS Mobile.
I mean,
that aspect
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, not many people did.
Right.
Like, you were a part of that library.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Like, I think that's pretty awesome.
It's published under the name Ravenheart instead of Studio Ravenheart.
Okay.
Which is probably negligible to anyone else, but to me that stings a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it was before you were a studio. It was when you were an individual.
That's true.
Yeah.
I don't know. In my mind and in my documentation, I refer to it as PSM Seraphim.
Okay.
And to delineate it from Seraphim proper.
Okay.
And it's not something I love talking about. I don't know.
Okay, I won't bring it up again.
No, we can talk about it, but it's not like, I don't know. It's not this big proud thing for me. I don't know.
Yeah. I should talk. I don't know if did I ever mention on the pod that like we have had like PlayStation Mobile archivists contact us to try to get like if we have a hacked Vita, so we can like dump your game effectively and make it like available to other people with hacked Vitas.
Right.
Which obviously, as a Sony partner, you're not going to get involved with.
I just don't want to risk jeopardizing.
But like, I do think it's interesting that there are people who are like, Seraphim is one of the like grails that we're trying to like archive.
I think I've said this publicly before, but I'll say it again. I have copies still to this day of the last sales report.
Yeah.
For that, and I believe it was 128 copies sold globally.
Okay.
And I got paid $128 from Sony.
I wish. I know you cashed that check.
It has.
At the bank.
I think. Well, I know I scanned it.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say you need to frame. You should have. Oh,
yeah.
That almost would have been better, like not to cash it and just like, because it was like Sony Computer Entertainment of America.
Yeah.
Like, it's your name.
Right.
And then
Now, with my current development license, I have a business account because I'm required to have one, and they have that bank information, so it would be direct deposit. But
they don't even send you a check.
Right.
Yeah.
And they do. All console holders do that quarterly. So they pay out their developers quarterly.
Oh, okay.
So that's something you have to think about as a developer is, okay, I might release this game in August, but I'm not going to see the revenues
until end of September.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Something.
That's something developers actually do, like incorporate in their plans.
Okay, so if a game is going to like release you might strategically release your game. If you know it's going to be like sell a bunch of titles, you might want to release it right before you get paid. You know, so that way you see that return like instantly.
Right. Or if you're trying to avoid extra income on your last year, you might release after that date. Yeah.
Maybe that's a reason why some people like delay their game into early 2020 whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
Literally their financial team could come forward and say, we need to delay this game 1 month.
We've made too much money this year.
Right. Because it would knock them up in the last tax bracket. Or the next tax bracket.
Take a quick break?
Yep. So we're going to get into our t-shirts for this episode, and we'll start with Taylor's t-shirt. He has this really cool black crew neck short sleeve t-shirt.
As they usually are.
As they usually are. It's got Conductor Pikachu on the front. Nice art. And then underneath that, Pokemon Symphony Evolution. Symphonic Evolution, sorry. So this is a concert shirt?
Yeah, so if you're curious...
Oh, yeah.
The tag is printed on inside.
Yeah.
It's not really a tag.
So it has the Pokemon logo printed on the actual inside of the back of the shirt.
Right. Copyright 2015.
Pokemon. Let's see if I can read that. Copyright 1995 to 2015 Nintendo / Creatures Inc. Game Freak Inc. And then the rest of the copyright.
This was the 20th anniversary year.
Right.
So they did a special concert series. I know for sure in North America. I don't know if they did it anywhere in Europe or anywhere else.
Right.
But the one I went to was in San Diego during Comic-Con sometime in July of 2015.
That's right. I remember this.
It was an outdoor venue, and they were selling merch. And so I did pick up the concert shirt. It has a very Gen 5 like logo font
it
going
does
on
look
down here.
Black and white.
But 2015 would put this X and Y came out 2 or 3 years prior, and Sun and Moon wouldn't be released until the following year alongside Pokemon Go.
Right.
So yeah, the world was about to be taken by storm a year after this concert series.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the Conductor Pikachu standing on that little step, and he's got his
his
baton,
wand.
conductor wand. I'm sorry, music people are probably really upset at us.
He's got a little bow tie and
a little tux.
Tuxedo blazer.
Tuxedo blazer, yeah. Love this shirt.
Yeah, good shirt. All right.
Rick is also wearing a black crew neck t-shirt, short sleeve.
Also Pokemon.
And also Pokemon related. This is the Hoenn Tour t-shirt. So this t-shirt was only available in Las Vegas as part of the Hoenn Tour in February of 2022.
That's Pokemon Go.
Pokemon Go, yes. Yeah. So, they do these events every year where they focus on a specific generation of Pokemon from the Pokemon games. And they do like a big event around that whole generation. And so last year was Hoenn. So it looks like a Pokeball. It's red on the top, blue on the bottom half. It's got, so it's like, think of like two rainbows, one right side up, one upside down, but they're kind of like interlocked with each other, and there's a circle in the middle.
Yeah, to create a Pokeball pattern.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the top is red, and it shows Primal Groudon.
Yep.
And the bottom is blue, and it shows Primal Kyogre. These sort of like silhouettes.
Yeah. With the glowing patterns.
Yeah, the glowing effect of the runes and stuff on their body.
I like that Kyogre has a lighthouse in the background.
Yes.
With a Pokestop right there.
Yeah, and Groudon, you can see like a mountain off to the side on his, and a Pokestop. Yeah, it's a nice shirt.
Yeah, I like it.
I think we picked that up for you I think when we went. The line for that, we got to the park where the event was at like 7 a.m, and there was only one station to pick up shirts, and there was no pre-purchase of shirts.
Yeah, it
was just pick up at event only, or just like you just had to get in line. And so we got in line like at 7 a.m, and the event didn't start till 10, and they didn't start selling shirts until like I think almost 9 o'clock. So by the time shirts went for sale, there was maybe 30 people in front of us.
Yeah.
But the line to buy shirts was probably 1,000 people long.
Wow.
Yeah, it was bonkers.
Yeah, that is crazy.
It was at a public park.
Yeah.
So like looky-loos were there, like it was kind of a
using
mess.
up cell tower data.
Yeah, I think maybe we've talked about it before, but it was like a big mess compared to how the Sinnoh Tour event in Pasadena was run this year.
Right. That one you could pre-order shirts. They had them ready for you. Yeah. It was a very short line.
Although I do remember being like, why are they making us wait to pick them up?
Right.
Yeah, like they should have just like distributed them immediately.
Yeah, that's true. But it was enclosed. The public couldn't get there.
Yeah.
They had a portable mobile or cell towers.
Yeah.
And so data was like 5 bars at all times.
Yeah, it was no problem.
Yeah, it was great.
Okay, we're gonna jump into the news finally.
Yeah, let's get to the news.
Okay, so we've got like one kind of bigger story, and then we've got a bunch of little headlines, and then Rick's gonna kind of celebrate a 30th anniversary of a certain peripheral.
Yep.
Would you say?
I would say that.
At the end of the show. So first, let's start with our story. So last week, or was it last week it was last.
I'm not sure the dates.
It was Friday. Not last Friday, but the Friday before last.
Okay.
The Game Awards, not the Game Awards, Summer Games Fest had their big annual show with various announcements. This show is run by Jeff Keighley. He's the same guy who runs the Game Awards in December. So
think about the Game Awards, but without the awards.
Yeah,
so all the world premieres and all the trailers and all that.
That's all there. They generally tend to be of a higher, bigger caliber than the ones at the Game Awards, because a lot of the other companies have their own June shows that they do.
The announcements,
the announcements.
Yeah.
Now, there was some cool announcements, but we're not really here to talk about the announcements. What we are here to talk about is that Jeff Keighley, doesn't do this out of the kindness of his heart.
No, he doesn't.
He charges a pretty penny for developers and publishers to be a part of his events.
Yeah.
Esquire, the magazine and website, somehow got their hands on the document that shows how much it costs to be a part of the Game Awards. So I'm going to break down the 4 or so different categories that Jeff offers to publishers and developers to...
The, marketing packages.
Yeah. So for a 1-minute trailer, it costs $250,000 to be a part of Summer Games Fest and the Game Awards. For a 1.5-minute trailer, it costs $350,000. A 2-minute trailer is $450,000, and a 2.5-minute trailer is $550,000.
So if you wanted to put this together, that's the best deal, of course. The last one, you're getting the most time for the most, least amount.
Yeah, I guess starting at 1.5 minutes, it goes up $100,000 for every 30 seconds.
Yeah.
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 Which is crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
these aren't Super Bowl prices.
No, they're not. And I was expecting this to be in the millions, so I'm actually a little surprised it's that low.
So you're saying that maybe he is doing this out of
No.
Okay.
Not at all. He wouldn't have us sit through that many freaking world premieres.
I know. Yeah. That's why the Game Awards is 4 hours long.
Yeah.
It's because he keeps getting people saying, "Hey, I'll give you $500,000, Jeff."
And it doesn't bother me that I have to sit through all the announcements and all the trailers and all the marketing, but what does bother me is when the award recipients are getting shooed off after like 10 seconds of being on stage. It's ridiculous.
Because the award recipients are not making Jeff any money.
No.
So
he needs to show everyone another $250,000 trailer.
Yeah.
So they need to go.
But that's not a problem at Summer Games Fest.
Yeah, because there are no awards.
Right. So apparently now Jeff isn't like a complete monster.
No.
He does offer indies and select friends, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well, this is kind of the nepotism package.
Yeah, an earned editorial place in the show.
Right.
Meaning that Jeff sets aside certain amount of time for free slots, effectively,
right.
for maybe indie games he's excited about, or his team is excited about, or maybe he got submitted something and he thinks, hey, I want to help this unknown dev show off this really cool concept that they're working on.
Or he gives it all to a certain friend of his.
Visionary game designer Hideo Kojima.
Yeah.
Like his 8-minute segment.
It was over 10 minutes.
It was long. It just went on.
Yeah,
and on,
it was like they had this whole set on the stage, and he came out, talked a lot, and told us nothing.
Yep.
And showed some stuff, like some cryptic hints of something. Yeah.
Something that won't mean anything, probably ever.
No. No, probably never.
But so I mean that is cool that like indies do have a way to get involved, but I would imagine it's harder to get involved as an indie. Like I don't think there's a paid path as an indie. Like you basically, Jeff has to think you're cool enough to include.
Yeah, it's even worse, to be honest, because an indie could theoretically somehow come up with $250,000. An indie can't just guarantee themselves Jeff's favor.
Right. Now I think if you want to give Jeff $250,000, I think he'll basically put whatever you want in there. You know, every year people complain about the Genshin Impact and Star Rail trailers that inevitably get put in there, and it's like, this is why Jeff puts them in there, because Hoyoverse or MiHoYo, they opt for the 2.5 minute segment,
right?
And Jeff's like, and sometimes they have like one for Genshin and one for another game, you know. So that's why Jeff is so keen on MiHoYo. They make him a lot of money.
His favorite games reflects who pays him the most. Yeah.
Now, it's not like Jeff pockets all of this money.
No.
He rents out huge, massive theaters.
Yeah, his overhead has to be pretty big.
Pretty high, yeah. He's got the Peacock Theater during the Game Awards, and then he's got YouTube Theater in Inglewood during Summer Games Fest. And then he also puts on this like Summer Games Fest Play Days event now. Mm-hmm. That's for like press and influencers to attend and meet publishers and play games.
Is that what you went to?
No, that was IGN Live, which is different.
But I remember you talking about you were on some show floor. But
after the Game Awards last year, they did Day of the Devs.
That's what I'm
Double Fine. Okay. So this is Play Days is made in partnership with I Am 8-Bit. I think they do a lot of the organizing of this Play Days thing.
Okay,
but it is a lot bigger of a thing. And then, of course, they charge publishers to have a space. Right. But basically, it's kind of become the new E3 in terms of like, but only press and influencers can attend.
Right, which is how E3 started.
Right. But I mean, well, E3 also allowed like other developers.
Yeah, that's true.
To join in and stuff too, like at no cost.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
But this is still, it's bigger than it was last year, but it's still fairly small scale.
Mm-hmm.
And I know like a lot of like PlayStation had a presence there, but they were like you had to make an appointment with them. You couldn't just walk in and play demos.
I wonder if we could get in as influencers.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, we could certainly pitch ourselves.
Yeah.
To
Jeff
next year. I have his like email.
Yeah.
Because he used to email people like discounted like ticket things to the Game Awards from his old Game Slice email address, which I know he still uses today.
Yeah.
So I mean, we could be like, hey Jeff,
yeah, hey,
here we are.
You remember us? We met.
I did meet him at the very first PlayStation experience. Yeah. He was walking by real fast. He looked dead tired. It was the night after the Game Awards. I'm sure he was at after parties and stuff. But I was like, hey, great show last night.
He was probably also meeting with PlayStation execs and stuff like that.
So yeah, to rent those theaters, I mean, we're talking hundreds, if not $1 million to rent the theater.
I expect because he has to rent it for the whole day. Because it's not just
longer.
Yeah, longer.
Like
probably.
In the days leading up to it, they have to put the sets and do all the rehearsals and
all the cameras and stuff.
It's a lot of work.
And I'm sure they charge for parking reservation stuff too.
Yeah,
like separately from the building. So yeah, he has an overhead.
Yeah,
in the millions.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's still definitely bringing home a tidy sum at the end of every one of these
with as many announcements that happen. Yeah.
And I'm not here to say he doesn't deserve that. You know, an opening became available.
Yeah.
When E3 started to fall apart and like Spike Game Awards fell apart, and he was like, I want to do this legit, you know?
Well, okay, so before the Game Awards, there was that other one. What were they called? Was it the Spike Game Awards? I thought it was
It was called the VGAs.
That's it.
But like Jeff was involved in all of that.
Yeah, I know, yeah. And that turned into this commercial mess of like celebrity
because
hosts.
He always did it in partnership with like some men's channel or like some like for men TV channel. So like it was Spike. Do you remember Spike? It was a channel.
Right.
Yeah. The last few years, the VGAs were with Spike or some other thing. But yeah, you're right. It was absolutely a celebrity cringe fest.
Celebrity cringe fest and advertiser cringe fest. But it was like the celebrities weren't relevant celebrities. They were like Samuel Jackson.
I mean, like people like him.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. What does he got to do with...
He plays a badass, I guess, in a lot of movies.
Okay. That's less than tangentially related to games.
Yeah, I don't even know if... Like, I mean, Sam Jackson's prolific. He's probably been in a game at some point. I'm
sure. But he's just one example. Like, it would be that...
But I mean, there's like Neil Patrick Harris has been there. Yeah. All kinds of stuff.
But Hollywood celebrities hosting them.
Yeah.
Making statements that were absurd. Like...
Oh, yeah. They'd be, like, crapping on gamers the whole entire time.
Yeah, it was like, I just want to blow up some heads and talking about just games generally.
Yeah. Like as if every game is, like, a gun game.
Right. Some action fest.
Yeah. So, it felt very, like it was fake. The whole thing, exactly. The awards were fake. It felt like everything was fake.
And I feel like the Game Awards is starting to go in that direction. And not to that degree, but Jeff Keighley was involved with the VGAs. And Jeff Keighley, this is his thing, like the Game Awards.
Right.
And it just feels like the whole thing's a giant commercial. 95% commercial.
It's a marketing event.
The other...
It's 100% a marketing event.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what E3 always has been.
Yeah, but that was a trade show.
Yeah.
So when it got open to the public and stuff, yeah. And you could make the argument that Nintendo Power would show up and all the other magazines would show up and they would put together marketing pieces in their magazines. But at the event, when it was like just press and industry, it was a trade show.
It was a trade show, yeah. I just mean the press conferences were like marketing.
Yeah, 100%.
Especially when they started being broadcast online, especially the shift to digital presentations. Right. Like, that started with Nintendo.
Still kind of a trade show in that they would get up there and show new hardware and new technology, which is indicative of a trade show, but it was definitely, Microsoft marketing the new Xbox.
But, I mean, now it's all those... There is no more standing on the stage. Right. I mean, like, Apple is kind of like...
They do that.
Apple still does that. Ubisoft still did that this year. Yeah. Ubisoft still had a theater presentation.
Was it online stream? Or?
It was streamed, but it was in a theater in LA. Oh, really? Like, they had an orchestra on stage at the beginning, playing music and stuff.
Did we go to that?
E3.
Did you go to that?
No.
Okay.
No, that was, you get invite only, like press influencers only, you know?
Makes sense.
I think there are ways for fans to get in to those things. You got to know the theater it's at, and you just got to stand out there all day. Yeah. And like hope that like someone's like, hey,
they need to fill seats.
Yeah, that kind of a thing.
Right.
I've heard that's how you get into that as like
as a normie.
Yeah. So just that gives you an idea. Jeff's bringing home some bacon.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be doing it if he wasn't.
No. I remember when he first, sorry not to bring us back on this topic, but like when he first did the Game Awards, he announced that he was basically like the very first year he was like, I am like putting my life savings into this project. Yeah. And like if it doesn't pay off, like, not that he'd be done. Jeff Keighley would never be like toast, but like he basically said that this is a big gamble for me. Yeah. Like if people don't receive this well, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do this again. And like this might be it,
And remembering back, like that first Game Awards was the most generous to the fans of all of them.
I remember they had like giveaway. Like when we walked out, we got like codes for like a free Tomb Raider game or something.
The amount of announcements felt right.
Yeah.
The speeches were longer.
Yeah.
The performances were better. Although in the beginning, I remember there were like hip hop artists and stuff. Now they actually had like teams and bands that are working on games playing.
Well, the one in Vegas, the first one, I mean, like Koji Kondo was on stage performing.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, like, pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, there were big names that showed up.
Yeah.
Like big celebrity, like Hollywood celebrities in the audience.
Yeah.
If I remember right.
Well, there was one year where I think it must have been 2017.
I remember Nolan North got on stage once or something.
Yeah, he won like Performance of the Year.
That's
I think when Uncharted 4 came out. And then you had like times where like Elon Musk was in the audience.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because his at the time girlfriend, Grimes,
yeah,
she was doing a performance that year.
Oh, okay, that's why he was there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, he's a gamer too.
Well, I figured he was just tech industry.
Yeah.
So he might show up to that.
Yeah. But okay, so now we're gonna shoot real quick through some quick headlines.
Yeah.
We've got like 5 or 6 little mini stories.
So these are unrelated to the Game Awards and all that.
Yeah, we're moving on from Jeff Keighley's stuff.
All right.
So last week we talked about the reception to Dragon Age: The Veilguard being pretty poor based on that announcement trailer.
You're right. Recap, it was like this hero shooter style trailer. Yeah.
Yeah, it did not look like Dragon Age.
Right.
Like just the style, the visuals, just the way they were announcing it. It was like very
characters with their names up and their Marvel style personalities.
Yeah. So they actually showed off about 20 minutes of gameplay this last week.
This was as a response to the backlash, right?
Well, the plan was always to show gameplay a couple days later. But maybe they should have not done it that way and just did it like both the same day or something.
True.
But the character party trailer showed at the Xbox, and it was the first appearance of this new Dragon Age game. You know, that's all we had to go on, was this really not good trailer.
Yeah.
And then we had gameplay a few days later. So overall, I will say, from what I'm seeing online, people seem to be pretty receptive to the gameplay that was shown off. It still does have like a distinct visual style. It doesn't look quite, it's like the world and stuff looks great. Like it looks very dark. Like Dragon Age is like dark
medieval fantasy.
It is not a cheery, bright, happy, fun place to live in. Like it is like, this is the worst possible medieval fantasy world you could exist in.
Is it horror fantasy at all, or
there's some like grotesque, like body horror monster kind of nasty things, you know.
That's horror.
But not like no jump scares or things like that. But yeah, sometimes there's like this race of creatures known as the Darkspawn that are like deep in the earth, and you go there in some of the games, and like you see these like the brood mother birthing and stuff.
I have seen the brood mother. I do know some of these creatures.
So yeah, like they look pretty grotesque, you know. But yeah, it's like a, you know, like no one lives past 20 years old in this world. You know, like it's like it's just rough. Right. Like everywhere you go, there is no good place to be alive in this world. So it does seem to have that darkness going for it. It's not all happy fun.
You wouldn't know that from the teaser.
No, you wouldn't. They do seem to be leaning more action based for the gameplay. The earlier you go with the Dragon Age games, the more tactical and kind of pause and issue command they sort of are. And then they've just progressively gotten
more action,
a little more action,
like real time. More
real time for sure. I mean, even Dragon Age Orange, you could play it real time, but you would want to like occasionally like pull up and bring the wheel to like tell your people. But you could like select someone and like point on the map where you wanted them to go. This is more, you can only control one character. You have a party of 3. You can pause the game by like holding one of the triggers, and it shows you like your ability wheel as well as like the ability wheels of like your 2 companions, and then you can press buttons to like trigger them to use their abilities.
But does it ever slow the game down?
Yeah, it does go like paused.
Okay.
So there is still a bit of that pause and play DNA in there.
Gotcha.
But like now there's like active dodging and parrying, so it is like got a little bit of like, I don't know, Devil May Cry sort of like action. Like you can like time, you know, perfect dodges and stuff like that.
Platinum game style. Yeah,
so I mean, understandably, some players are disappointed by that pivot.
Sure. You're gonna upset. I mean, that is an upset.
Yeah. I mean, it's been trending that way over time.
Yeah.
But yeah, this does feel like even more of a departure than previous Dragon Age games. But most people tend to be just kind of accepting. Like the combat in Dragon Age has never really been the highlight. It's always the great writing and world building and just the emphasis on your decisions mattering. And so as long as that's good, I think players will be mostly okay.
What about the visuals?
The visuals, like I mentioned, it does have a very dark look. The character models, we didn't really see any of them like super up close and like, you know.
I mean like quality wise.
Quality wise, I think it's okay. It does feel like they chose a specific visual style where they could get away with making things like it's not uber realistic at all.
Okay.
So I think in some way that was probably done to give it a unique visual identity, which every Dragon Age game does kind of have a unique visual identity. So that's not unheard of here.
Right.
But I think it also has maybe helped save them time so they don't have to make everything so hyper detailed.
You can also kind of cover up mistakes that way a little bit.
I think so, yeah. And then I think people will remember it, you know, as like, oh yeah, that's the one that looked like that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Just like Wind Waker effect.
Yeah. So like maybe it does help it be more timeless in some ways overall. Because like if you look back at the original Dragon Age, which did have a very gritty, realistic look.
Yeah, it looks dated now.
Oh god, it looks so dated.
Right.
Whereas Dragon Age 2, went for a more kind of cell shaded, kind of cartoony look. And that I think has held up better, even though it's only like 2 years older than the original Dragon Age Origins. Right.
Well, looking back at like the Wind Waker doesn't look dated necessarily.
Not at all.
And that game is way old.
I mean, that game did get like a remake. Yeah. Like, or a remaster.
I'm talking about even looking at the GameCube version.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Like, it still looks like it holds up.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I know everyone... That's the number one example people use. Yeah. Like, everyone like was put off by it a long time ago. Right. You know, everyone was like, what the heck? Yeah. You know, how are we going from like gritty, realistic Ocarina of Time stuff to like this cartoon, you know? Right. But then people have softened up on Wind Waker so much over the years, and they really tend to look very favorably on it, I think.
But just the effect of going with that art style caused, resulted in longevity of the game.
Definitely.
And also resulted in uniqueness and memorableness.
Memorableness.
Sure.
Yeah, let's go with that. I mean, Wind Waker is one of my probably top 3 somewhere in there.
I think most people would.
Yeah. Because it does stand out so much from the rest of the pack.
The gameplay too. Yeah. It's not just the visuals.
Yeah. So another big change for this Dragon Age game is Inquisition had these large open world-esque areas. And Dragon Age, the Veilguard, is going back to the basics, going back to how it was in Dragon Age Origins, where it was mission-based. Right. Much like the Mass Effect games are, where you have a hub, and you kind of go out on these specific missions, and you're going to be in more linear environments. They have said that there will still be little secrets and things to find in these environments, but it is going to be more straightforward like the original Dragon Age was. You're not going to have these massive open environments where you're going to get lost in for 10 hours.
Right.
You're just going to kind of set out for a mission. You'll spend some time in this environment. And they say that that's allowed them to be much more hands-on with the environment and really handcraft it and make it something that's like you're gonna remember. Like, when we went into that forest, like you're really gonna like. Or if like you talk about an open world game and you're like, oh yeah, remember that forest? It's like, depending on how much. And I will tell you, Inquisition, the third game, the one that won Game of the Year in 2014 at the very first Game Awards. Yeah. Their open environments were not good. Like, that was probably the weakest part of that game. It's like they were kind of chasing a trend, like a Skyrim had just come out a couple of years earlier. Yeah. And it was like, they probably felt the pressure. Yeah. We need to make stuff like that. And then it's funny because like 6 months after Dragon Age Inquisition came out, The Witcher 3 came out. Yeah. And really redefined what like an action adventure open world should be like. Right. And so like Dragon Age Inquisition was always compared like super unfavorably next to The Witcher 3.
Their timing was just never right.
I mean, maybe they got in exactly when they needed to, because if they had come out after The Witcher 3 did, I think people would have like,
you're right.
Like,
that would have been worse. Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that's Dragon Age Inquisition so far, or Dragon Age the Veilguard so far. I can tell you, like, I feel a big sense of relief after
the gameplay reveal.
The gameplay, yeah. Sure. There were some things I noticed that were kind of weird. Well, like there's this one moment.
The game's not finished yet.
No, it's not. So. But there was this one moment in the gameplay. This is the only one I'll bring up. You get to this like barrier blocking your path, this like magical barrier, and one of the characters comments like, "Oh, this barrier, they put it up to stop us." And then the player character just like presses X and like does a basic attack, and then the barrier falls apart. Yeah. And it's just like, why did that barrier even need to be there? Right. Like, there was no impact of like taking that barrier down. I don't know if that was like,
maybe that was more of a tutorial moment, like to show you how something works.
At the beginning of the trailer, it did say that it was like condensed. Yeah. Like this preview is like a condensed version of like, so maybe like you are gonna have to go off to the side and find some item to undo the barrier.
That could just be a shortcut that the developers put in there for themselves.
Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
Because I did see a lot of people going like, what the heck was that? Like, why was the point? Like, all he did was stab it with his dagger, and it just like...
If that's the case, just don't put the barrier there.
Yeah, exactly. Because, the character in your party was like, oh no, that barrier is stopping us.
Yeah, that's got to be more to that.
I hope so. You want to do this next one?
Sure. So EA executives made more than $60 million in 2023. And if anyone remembers, this is also while they're enacting massive layoffs throughout the whole same year.
Yeah.
What was it? Thousands, right?
EA, I think, did about a little more than 700 people were laid off last year. And their executives get rewarded handsomely.
Handsomely. Maybe they didn't get raises.
But they got bonuses.
Right. CEO Andrew Wilson brought home the most compensation with more than $25 million for the year of 2023. A terrible year for layoffs.
Yeah. That's like his regular compensation, any performance bonuses, and other forms of compensation like stock and stuff.
Maybe the layoffs are his work, that he's getting compensated for.
You might be right. I don't know how else you look at this.
Okay, so that he's followed up by Laura Miele. She doesn't get the honor of getting a proper pronunciation from me. Laura Miele with $12.1 million.
Yeah.
So
between the two of them, that's like 3/5 of all the compensation right there.
Yeah, that's let's do the math real quick. That's $72.1 million.
Well, no, 25 plus 12 out of 60.
What am I thinking of?
So it's like,
I'm thinking of that 60 million figure. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's 37.
I mean, Andrew Wilson alone almost got half of the executive compensation.
Yeah, you're right. What the heck? Okay. So
let's not feel bad for the executives that didn't get as much as Andrew did.
No, I don't. I'm just wondering why one dude...
I mean, I guess he's the boss.
Yeah, he is the boss. He's in control of that 60 million. So this information comes to us from EA's annual meeting and proxy statement document.
Which just released this morning, so this is pretty breaking.
This is breaking news, hot off the beacon press. The document praises Andrew Wilson, who, and I quote, oversaw a year of continued employee... Wow, they can't project more. Oversaw a year of continued employee satisfaction score above industry benchmarks with record high talent retention. I can't believe they said that. And strong talent attraction. Like,
you can't make this up.
You can't. They can't be serious. Like, this is a board of directors saying this, right?
Whoever prepared this document.
Right. I mean, who else but the C-level executives?
I guess, yeah.
Like, what are they? Who are they?
So he fires 700 people.
Yeah.
And somehow he oversaw a year of continued employee satisfaction.
Yeah.
Maybe he fired all the people who were unsatisfied.
Right. I mean...
Maybe they all took a survey, and that's how they determined who to
fire. they... Yeah, guys, people listening, when your boss tells you take this survey, this annual survey, it's anonymous. Do not believe them.
No, it's
not
anonymous.
It is not anonymous. They are lying to your face. Maybe the supervisor who's telling you this believes himself or herself that it is, but it is not. This is how I know. And, so don't be honest ever in any corporate environment if you are concerned with your own survival. And so so the second, so that's the first part of this statement, right? Employee satisfaction. And maybe you're right. What I don't understand is the second part. They said talent retention. High talent. Record high talent retention. Retention means you retain.
Right. You didn't lose anybody.
Everyone they laid off was, either in QA or in...
Some studios were closed
whole. Yeah, you're right.
from top to bottom.
This is EA. So they have a whole cemetery of studios in their backyard. Yeah. Like going back years, decades.
R.I.P. PopCap.
Yeah. Oh God. And others like legendary studios. And for them to say that it is an insult.
Yeah.
It's
imagine you're a former EA dev.
Yeah.
And you're reading
record high talent retention. What? Like, yeah, that would be your reaction.
They didn't have a chance to quit. We fired them.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We had record low voluntary termination.
Yeah.
I guess that's how they spin it. And strong talent attraction.
Who on earth is attracted to a studio that laid off 700 people?
I refuse to call EA a studio. They're a publisher. But I think they do have in-house development.
Oh, yeah. They have a lot of in-house studios.
Yeah. But, yeah, strong talent attract. Did they hire anyone? Because if I remember right, if my memory serves, they laid off like 750 people.
I'm sure they hired someone.
Right.
Maybe he was a really great guy.
I'm not like some advocate who stands against corporations having layoffs. I understand it's a natural part of the process, and I understand it's something that does happen. It has to happen. It's a sad thing. It should be avoided, as much as possible. But like for them to clink their champagne glasses with their $60 million.
I get, like you said, sometimes layoffs happen.
Yeah.
But $60 million in compensation.
Half of it to this guy, Andrew Wilson.
That money could have probably funded many of those jobs for a couple of years.
Right. And I mean, I understand that C-level execs are going to get millions. Give them $2 million. Like $2 million. What are you? How uncomfortable are you going to be with $2 million a year? This guy's getting $25 million.
Oh well, for what? These executives would probably quit.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If that's what they were given.
Let them.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Someone else will be there for the $2 million. I promise.
Yeah. Someone else would show up.
Right. So I mean, what do these guys do? Like, what does Laura Miele? I mean, I don't care about what her title is. What does she actually do on a day-to-day? Copy and paste some stuff?
I think they just work on these reports all year long that they send out to the shareholders.
Yeah. Sounds right.
And they make the tough decisions.
The tough decisions to, on behalf of 750 other people.
Right. So, and speaking of, these guys being awarded.
Yeah.
Usually, you get, if you're doing a good job, you get rewarded as an executive.
That's the theory.
Yeah.
As an executive, I mean, no. That's the theory, but
what do we know about their stock price?
It's stayed the same. It's stayed pretty much stagnant. It hasn't gone up or down, really.
Yeah, I looked, and for the past 4 years, it's been effectively a flat line.
It does go up and down with the market, as the market does. If you're looking that zoomed out, it's going to look flat. But if you look at week to week, the market there are times when it moves all at once, everyone just up and down.
But if you look at where they were in 2021, they're the same exact price today in 2024.
Yeah. So,
and there's no crazy peaks.
Yeah.
There's some valleys.
Yeah.
Not very many peaks going on here with EA.
It's just stayed. And this is why, because you have a bunch of incumbent C-level executives who just sit on their $25 million, do whatever they need to do to not get outed, or ousted, and just receive. We know that Bobby Kotick, when he was CEO of Activision, was pulling in the record for the industry, $32 million a year.
Yeah. That's
the most any CEO in the industry was getting paid.
Right.
And that was years ago.
Yeah.
What's he going to do with that exactly?
A couple yachts, probably. Yeah, I mean, an island.
You could buy that for way less. I feel like. I don't know.
I've heard there's a shortage of islands for billionaires to buy.
Is that right?
Yeah. Tough times for billionaires.
There's millions of islands on the planet.
But there's only so many that are like for sale.
Okay. I mean, I'd take an island. I'm not against buying islands. It's fine that this guy gets 25 million. Okay? Sure. But not when you're laying off 750 people.
Like you should not be.
If you're hiring 750 people, then take the money, take the CEO money.
Or like, you delivered record high profits for shareholders.
Yeah.
But they haven't done that.
Take the funny money. But when you're laying off you're like acquiring a bunch of people and then reversing, we made a mistake.
Yeah.
Like, no.
If you've invested into EA and you're in it for the long haul, your money's done nothing for 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah. And I imagine they offer employees stock and stuff,
Most companies do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean most tech companies do that.
Right. I mean, I guess if they're just giving it to you as bonus compensation, then it's held its value.
Yeah. You haven't really lost anything, but I mean, if I'm a billionaire shareholder, investor, board member, I'd kind of be upset. Why isn't my capital growing?
Yeah.
Andrew. So that's it for that story, guys. You get how I feel. It's fine that they get paid that much, but when people are getting fired, that money should go there first.
Yeah, maybe it should have been used to prevent.
Right. But
layoffs.
He's the CEO, so he's in charge of where the money goes. So he's paying himself first.
Yeah, he's going to willingly advocate for himself to get a big fat bonus.
Of course. For his work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at Jeff Keighley's Summer Games Fest, there were several big announcements, but we're just going to talk about one because of its noted significance, I would say.
Yeah.
PlayStation announced a new game not really set in the Horizon series, but it is a retelling of the very first Horizon game, Horizon Zero Dawn, in the form of Lego.
Yeah.
So the game is called Lego Horizon Adventure, and it looks like your, I don't want to say typical Lego game, but it has that, tend to go for, in these Lego retellings of movies and entertainment properties, they tend to go for a very cheeky, silly kind of self-referential, fourth wall breaking kind of tone.
I played a few of the Lego games.
Yeah, they're actually pretty fun.
They're good.
They are, straightforward, anyone can jump in and enjoy themselves.
When it's something you care about.
Yeah.
When it's I don't know. I'm not gonna throw anything under the bus.
Most of the Lego games these days are tied to some property of some kind.
Right.
Usually movie or Marvel
or DC.
DC. This is the first time I feel like we've seen a video game property turned into a Lego game.
Yeah. That might be correct.
So kind of interesting in that regard. But what's really interesting about this is that this is basically a first-party Sony game.
Yeah.
And it is coming to the Nintendo Switch willingly. PlayStation wants to put it on the Switch. It's going to launch on PS5, PC, and Nintendo Switch. It's skipping Xbox for some random unknown reason. I think PlayStation might still be a little bitter about the acquisition of Activision Blizzard by Microsoft.
It could be that, or it could be that Sony PlayStation feels that Microsoft Xbox is more their direct competitor than Nintendo.
I do think that is a factor as well.
Right.
Just because Nintendo is just in its own lane doing its own thing,
pretty much,
and they don't feel like it's
the Switch versus the PS5 is not really much of a comparison.
Yeah.
The way the Xbox versus.
Still interesting.
Yeah.
That they're doing this of their own volition. Now, Sony has another game series that has appeared on Switch and Xbox.
Yeah.
And that's MLB The Show, which is developed by Sony's San Diego studio.
Yeah.
But the only reason those games are on the Switch and Xbox, and this is a recent development, I think only the last 2 or 3 years.
I think we talked about it.
Okay.
Didn't we?
Possibly.
Okay.
I know we've spoken about it before
Yeah.
privately, but maybe we've mentioned it on the podcast. But basically, Major League Baseball, the MLB, said you're gonna lose your license to make this game if you don't start putting it on the other cons. Because MLB is like, hey, this baseball game has basically set itself up as the baseball game.
Yeah.
All the other baseball games have kind of fallen away.
Yeah.
And so they're like, you can't have a monopoly on baseball games. Like, there's too much money to be made by putting this game elsewhere. So Sony obliged and said, okay, we'll put it on, and then now Sony gets a cut of all that revenue on all the other platforms.
So now basically, like, PlayStation is a Nintendo licensed developer now.
Isn't that nuts? Yeah. Like, Nintendo and PlayStation. Like, it's weird. Imagine working at Nintendo and you get that application.
Yeah. Sony.
Like, I'm sorry, San Mateo, California?
Right.
Okay, PlayStation wants to develop.
First name Sony, last name PlayStation. That's, I'm sure that's not how the news broke to Nintendo, but
no, yeah,
probably started with some emails.
I do feel like it's a good fit.
Yeah,
it being on a Nintendo console. Mm-hmm. I think Nintendo does still have that like kid-friendly persona and accessibility. A lot of kids and tweens have Switches.
I think that Lego properties belong on Switch first.
Yeah.
Before the other two.
Right. Yeah. So I think it makes financial sense. But I do think this is the first hint of Sony kind of opening the door to starting to publish elsewhere rather than just their own console.
Which we're seeing with PC as well. They've opened the door to that recently. And also I'm going to add, I think maybe we're seeing the very beginning throes of the exclusives tradition falling apart.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, with Xbox porting more and more of their games to PlayStation
and Nintendo, right? Like, Xbox games exclusives have gone to Switch now, right?
Yes. Yeah. But, that has happened. Nintendo, I think we talked about this prior, Nintendo will be the last holdout in this thing.
Yeah.
Their mentality is we make games for our system to sell our system.
Yeah.
And that's generally how the other companies have worked too. Mm-hmm. But Nintendo technologically is like a generation behind these other two in terms of visuals.
Right. In terms of processing, I'd say.
Yeah. So like their games are less expensive to make, broadly speaking.
Yeah.
They take less development time,
right?
So they can get them out faster.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's going to start going away for Nintendo with the Switch 2, or maybe whatever comes after the Switch 2.
Yeah,
they're going to start. They've already started facing some of those longer development cycles.
Mm-hmm.
But I was reading an article that it's basically not enough to sell your game on one platform any longer. Like exclusives, they don't pay for themselves anymore.
Doesn't make sense anymore.
Like Marvel Spider-Man 2 was apparently the most expensive video game
ever
made, basically.
Right.
And they still haven't broken even on that game.
Yeah, right. And it's because, most likely it's because it's an exclusive on PlayStation.
Yeah.
And if it was on Xbox, Switch, and PC, it probably would have...
Right. And it's not for lack of sales. The game has sold tremendously.
Yeah. Right.
Like more than 12 million copies or something like that, I believe. That's wonderful.
Right.
But that's not enough sales anymore.
Right.
For Sony to make a profit, they need half of PlayStation 5 owners to buy that game.
Yeah.
So they're probably going to be like, okay, we got to get this out on PC.
Yeah.
And then there's probably people internally pushing. Xbox is doing it. We need to do it. Let's get Spider-Man on Xbox.
Who was the first, Microsoft or Sony, to go?
Microsoft cracked.
Really?
Yeah.
They went to Switch first, right? Or...
Some of their indie games started showing up on Switch.
Okay.
It kind of started with, I think, the Banjo-Kazooie Smash Brothers relationship.
Yeah, that's right.
The doors started to open.
Mm-hmm.
And then rare games started appearing on Nintendo 64, Switch Online app.
Yeah.
Things like that, because they have to license from Microsoft today.
Right.
And now, earlier this year, Microsoft put like Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment.
Bunch of Xbox exclusive, premier titles.
Yeah.
on Switch.
And then even at their Xbox presentation, they announced that, the new Doom game would be coming to PS5, even though they wholly own Bethesda and id Software.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they are still doing that. They are still spreading it around. They're going to continue.
It's crazy that we're seeing that, and not just from, like, third-party exclusives, but first-party exclusives going to Nintendo. What hasn't happened still is, or has it, PlayStation and Microsoft. Like, has there been an Xbox game on PlayStation now?
Has there been an Xbox? Yeah, like Hi-Fi Rush,
that's right,
Pentiment.
Okay. I thought that was just going to Switch.
No. Okay. Like, all three of those titles, like...
Switch and PlayStation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi-Fi Rush might not be on Switch yet. I can't remember.
Okay.
Or maybe it did get a Switch release. I can't remember.
No, I gotcha.
But, Tango Gameworks is gone, so if it didn't get a Switch release, someone else is going to have to port it.
Right.
They actually had their last day last week, and, like, developers were, like, posting pictures of, like, the kind of studio boxed up, basically.
Yeah.
And it showed that they had, like, a little pizza corporate pizza party.
Sad. So, I mean, this could mark the long-term end of the console wars, because no more exclusives.
I think it's the beginning of the end of the console wars. I really do think, we're going to get to a point where everyone's box does everyone's games.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just a matter of what ecosystem.
At that point, though, why not just have one box? I feel like that's the natural selection way to go.
I think that's why Microsoft is jumping on this kind of seemingly early and very, like, they're gung-ho about it.
Yeah.
Because they want their properties everywhere. Because they want people to be thinking about, their properties. And I think Sony's like, oh man, they see what they're trying to do,
Yeah.
But I don't know. Xbox hardware is not selling super well.
Right.
And maybe that's the other reason. But yeah, I think you're right. I think if one day there will be, if there's even local computing anymore, it is just going to go down to one box.
Yeah, and then no box because it's going to be streamed.
Yeah, or just some tiny little circle that streams the game.
Right. To your controller.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh God, dude. I don't want to be around for that.
It's literally going to be like Google Stadia for everything.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on.
Yeah, that's depressing as hell.
We got a little Unity story. You want to take that one?
Sure. Let me see here. Okay. So, Xbox's Major Nelson joins Unity as their new community director. Larry Herb.
I think it's Herb.
Also known as Major Nelson, worked with the Xbox team for 20 years before leaving Microsoft last year. At Xbox, Larry served as their senior programming director. He also ran a semi-official Xbox blog where he would give fans a behind-the-scenes look at the going-ons at Xbox.
This blog, I think it was just called MajorNelson.com or something like that.
Okay.
I think it was a year or two ago. Like, it just went away, and now it just redirects to, like, the official Xbox, like, PR like website.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So not even like the official Xbox blog?
Well, I think it's called Xbox Wire.
Okay. Got it.
So I think it is like sort of the PR and the like sort of a blog website too.
Gotcha.
But yeah, like crazy. None of that. I mean, I'm sure people archived his website.
Yeah, sure. The Wayback Machine.
But yeah, they didn't like make it available to like still peruse.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So Larry had this to say about joining Unity. Building on my long history as a developer advocate at Xbox, I'm excited to collaborate again with developers, harnessing our collective creativity to shape the future of real-time gaming and experiences. And perhaps Unity needs someone like Larry to help rebuild their public image after the disastrous year at Unity in 2023, which... John Riccatello is gone from Unity, and he's been replaced by... Is it still the interim CEO?
No, there's a new guy. We talked about him earlier this year. I don't have his name.
Oh, yeah. Handy. He came from EA, right?
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
So in lieu of that, or in light of that, and just that kind of culture coming into Unity since it becoming a public traded company, yeah, this is very welcome. Someone who has actually worked on like game development and worked with developers,
bridging the gap between fans and like what's going on at work, effectively.
What did they call him? What was his title? Community director?
Community director. So I don't know if this is something that existed prior. I mean, I'm sure they had a social media guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
I think Larry is not their social media guy.
He's probably more of an advisor type strategy intel type person.
Yeah.
Which is great because that means he really does understand on a pretty minute level the development process, as well as the marketing process. And Unity really does need someone with some actual talent.
I think he's a strategic hire to help repair their image long term.
Definitely. Now, I'm going to say this about Unity. Their position is still pretty much leading, engine for new developers and existing developers. They're still very much in the lead in that regard.
Yeah.
You had some other developers kind of come close or catch up a little bit. That being Unreal and some Godot or whatever.
I mean, Unity took a hit last year, but it's not like they're down for the count.
Right.
They're not out of the game.
Right.
And it did give a window for other developers to hey, we're here too, you know?
Right.
If you're uncomfortable working with Unity.
I think in that time, we didn't cover it, but I think in that time, Unreal changed their whole packaging structure.
Oh, they did.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they became basically what Unity was, where there's a free version and paid versions.
Okay.
And, so they kind of tried to take that seat.
Hey, when there's an opening, your opponent's stumbling.
Absolutely. I welcome it because I want to see Unity improve.
Right.
I'm too invested and entrenched in Unity to switch to Unreal now. I wouldn't do that jump unless I absolutely had to.
What about if you were ever obviously Seraphim, you're not going to translate that to
I'm not even going to update the version.
Right. But I mean a future game project, would you be willing to try, or is it I don't want to relearn something?
What I would do is, while working on games in Unity, I would probably do some tutorials and make some other little stuff in Unreal.
Okay.
And, get my feet wet that way.
Okay.
But, I mean, I wouldn't be okay, now guys, we're going to make a game in Unreal.
Yeah.
I would be tinkering with it, as well as other engines like Construct and stuff like that. Because I do like that. I love, tech and game development stuff. Anyways, that's the story.
Okay. So we got two more little stories. So this next one is kind of a rumor. Well, it is a rumor until we know otherwise. But there's enough rumblings about it that I'm confident kind of talking about it here.
Sure.
So Square Enix might be publishing the father of Final Fantasy's latest game, Fantasian. So Hironobu Sakaguchi, he's the guy who's often credited with Final Fantasy, sort of saving Square Enix back in their early days.
Yep.
And he was involved with Square Enix until he left the company in 2003 after the kind of commercial flop of his movie, The Spirits Within.
Yeah, that's what got him.
There's sort of this Japanese shame thing where you leave a company after a flop.
A flop, I guess. But he went on to start Mistwalker.
That's right. And Mistwalker's released a bunch of games over the year.
Yeah.
But their latest game, Fantasian, was only released on iOS, Mac, and Apple TV.
Much to my chagrin.
Yeah. And the best way to play it is Apple TV.
Yeah.
Because you can get a real controller and everything and play it on your TV. And so, fans have been clamoring. And this game has only been available if you subscribe to Apple's Apple Arcade service. You can't just buy the game.
Right.
Of course. So
of course you can't.
No, you got to pay.
You got to subscribe.
Yeah. And this game was originally released in two halves. I think one half came like in April, and the next half came in like August. Of course, that was probably a strategic thing on Apple's part, because then we'll keep people subscribed for like 6 months, you know. But the game has been complete for a couple years now. It came out in 2021, and interestingly, Square Enix of all people is going to be publishing it for him.
Yeah.
So this would mark in more than 21 years, basically, Sakaguchi's return to Square Enix. Not like as an employee.
In some capacity.
Yeah, but as almost like he's sort of an indie and they're going to publish his game on consoles for him.
Yep.
Which I do find interesting. Like, why wouldn't he just go the self-publishing route?
Yeah, there's that. Probably for marketing reasons. I'm sure Square Enix can reach further.
I think so. I think you're absolutely right. I think Mistwalker's reach is tiny.
Tiny compared, yeah.
But Square Enix can go blast everyone's emails and be like, hey guys, Hironova Sakaguchi's back.
Yeah.
We've got his new game.
Host a launch event.
Well, I wouldn't get excited.
But it is Sakaguchi. There's a fervor.
Yeah, I would say you're right, but we just talked a couple episodes about how Square Enix apparently like laid off their events team.
Yeah, that's true. And they got that new shift, toward whatever
digital.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm hopeful this means that a physical copy is in the works. Because this is a digital only thing on Apple.
Right. This would be the only time it would ever, or the first time. It could ever
get physical.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't launch physically now, I don't think it ever will.
Yeah.
Which is like criminal,
right,
for Hironova Sakaguchi's game not to have a physical release,
right.
Especially because it's not a live service game. Right. It's a 100% offline JRPG single player game from start to finish. It's everything you'd want.
Yeah. So the fact that there is a single player, JRPG by Sakaguchi that I haven't gotten into yet.
Yeah.
Hurts me.
Yeah.
And it's because it's been on Apple TV.
Yeah.
That I haven't played it.
Like an expensive ecosystem. I mean, like Apple products are not cheap.
No.
Apple TV is probably the most accessible way to get into the Apple ecosystem. I think it's like $150 or $200 to buy an Apple TV. Which is still a lot of money, but at least you're not buying $1,000 iPad or phone,
right?
Or a $2,000 MacBook,
right?
So perhaps this game is going to be announced very soon, maybe even as early as tomorrow's Nintendo Direct, which was just announced this morning. So the Nintendo Direct tomorrow will be June 18th, so by the time you're listening to this, it'll already have happened.
Yeah.
But we will definitely be covering it on our next episode. Probably a fairly in-depth coverage, I'm going to guess.
I would expect so.
So Nintendo says to expect about 40 minutes, which is pretty beefy for a console at the end of its life cycle.
Usually they... it seems to be about 35 minutes, 30 minutes.
This is long.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's... games that have been announced years ago, like Metroid Prime 4, which was announced as Switch. The Switch is nearing its end. Is it finally time for Metroid Prime 4 to become a thing?
Yeah, we'll see.
So it says it's focused primarily on 2024 Nintendo Switch titles, which means there's always at least one or two games that are going to be... Otherwise, they'd say only.
Yeah.
If they say, like, primarily, then that means there's at least one game that's 2025.
Yeah.
Now, people have been speculating that a game like Metroid Prime 4 might be the cross-generational game for the Nintendo successor.
So. I mean, what else? Really? Like, they're just going to launch it on Switch?
Yeah.
And at the end of its life?
Yeah, and then, it'll probably be playable. This, Switch 2 is likely to be backwards compatible.
Right.
But, like, if they don't have, like, a Switch version and a Nintendo Switch 2 version that's, like, enhanced or whatever, that would probably be a silly move on their part. But we've seen... They've basically always had this cross-generational title. It's
mostly been Zelda.
You're absolutely right. So it's not going to be Zelda this time, probably.
Not. No.
Yeah.
Their Zelda games are taking too long at this point.
Yeah. Now, there are some other rumors that a new 2D Zelda will get announced tomorrow.
Okay.
For Nintendo Switch. There's like a holiday game for Switch this year. Okay. So... Could be...
would expect to see either the Oracle games.
If it's a remake, I hope it's the Oracle games. Yeah.
Or it could be
Minish Cap.
Yeah.
Or,
that'd be good.
I mean,
I'd almost want Minish Cap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd prefer an original 2D Zelda game.
Yeah. Same.
But if we are going to get a remake, I will take either the season... Dude.
Bring back Four Swords.
Four Swords would be cool. I would love Four Swords. Yeah. I don't know that the general population would be like super thrilled about a new Four Swords game.
Right.
But because the Four Swords game are often seen as sort of like a sub-series in some ways.
Yeah, I mean...
Even though technically they are canonical entries in Zelda games.
The whole canonical thing, I just
don't let's not get into that.
But, I mean, the last thing, like, nod that Four Swords got was that Zelda Triforce Heroes.
Triforce Heroes, was that the last E3?
I think so.
Oh no, that was like 2017. The Switch was already out when that game was announced.
Right.
But yeah, that was... And it wasn't even a Four Swords game because it was 3 players.
Yeah, it wasn't a Four Swords game, but it was the closest thing.
Yeah, it's essentially a Four Swords game.
Right. It obviously, harkened that.
It probably started as a Four Swords
You're probably
game.
right.
And then somewhere along the way, they just figured that 3 players worked better for what they were trying to do.
For sure, it wouldn't exist without Four Swords.
Nope, definitely not. So this is essentially the last major E3... or not E3 season presentation.
Yeah.
I know Limited Run does have, I think next week they're doing their LRG3, they call it, presentation.
Oh boy.
And so you can expect some fun physical announcements, I think, and probably some kind of like big announcements too, you know? But in terms of the major publishers, it's just Nintendo we've been waiting on.
Yeah.
And then, E3 season is over.
They specifically said no successor information.
So do not get your hopes up.
That's disappointing big time for me.
It seems like they are going to follow the same exact cycle they did with the Nintendo Switch, which was announced late summer, early fall, and then released March or so of the following year.
Right.
So it'll be announcement, and then 6 months later, the console's available.
Right.
Yeah. Rather than like a drawn out like year-long process.
Right. People don't have that attention span anymore.
Yeah. I mean, this could very well be the last Nintendo Switch focused Nintendo Direct.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I would have to imagine if there's an announcement of they finally unveiled a new console, and then there's a Nintendo Direct, it will be split. It'll be like, here's the launch titles coming to Nintendo Switch 2 or whatever it's going to be called.
And then here's the coming Switch games.
Here's like the ones we announced earlier, but we'll show a little more. I also think this might be our next opportunity to see Pokemon Legends.
You're right.
The next Pokemon Legends game. Which for me is like...
That's a big deal. For me too.
Wait.
I know that Furfrou is going to be in it because it's in the teaser.
Right.
And so, I will play through it just for that.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Yeah, so we will in excruciating detail probably talk about every at least first party announcement next week.
Yes. Let's try not to do every game. We did that last time.
We might skip some third party stuff.
That was grueling.
But I think we probably will have the excitement and energy for the first party stuff.
Definitely.
All right, you've got a fun piece here.
Yes. So
we're done with the mini headlines, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're
Not so mini.
We're through that.
But hey, we got through them faster than our usual stories.
True. All right. So this is a little different. The Super Game Boy was an SNES cartridge that allowed you to play Game Boy games on the Super NES. And if you grew up in the 90s or the early 2000s, you know what this is. You've seen it.
It was a revelation to me. I did not know it existed until I went over to like a friend's house.
Really?
And like we played our Pokemon Game Boy cartridge.
Yeah.
And then they were like in color. This was like pre-Game Boy Color.
Yeah.
So like now they're in color. Or before I had a Game Boy Color, I should say.
So the Super Game Boy turned 30 on Friday.
Wow.
On June 14th, 2024. Yep. And so it launched in the United States on June 14th, 1994 for $59.99.
That's pretty. I think the Game Boy was $100.
Adjusted for inflation, that's $123.
Dang.
Yeah.
Okay, so not a cheap.
No.
Most games back then.
That was the price of a Game Boy.
Yeah.
Pretty much. The peripheral, or using this peripheral on Super Nintendo, had some perks, such as adding color, like Taylor just mentioned.
Real quick, I want to mention the launch price of the Game Boy in the United States was $90.
Right, but Game Boy Color was more, I think.
Right, I just mean compared to the price of... It was almost like they were charging you, like, hey, this is sort of a Game Boy.
Yeah. That's what it was. Yeah. For sure. And probably more because you were using the Super Nintendo's power. Yeah. Like, that's got more than...
juice.
Yeah. And some games took advantage of that.
They did.
I'm going to get into that. So using the peripheral on your Super Nintendo featured some perks such as adding color to games which up to that point had not seen color. Yeah. You know, like black and white Game Boy games finally shown, and it wasn't like accurate colors, but it was like that blue and red stuff.
I think it was actually a step. It wasn't like, because the Game Boy Color, you could press the D-pad at launch in like either directions and hold down like B or A to use like one of 16 different color palettes or something like that. Yeah. My understanding is that for the Super Game Boy, some games actually like the developers program things
that is true.
For Super Game Boy.
Yep, that is true.
And I believe the Pokemon games did have like pretty good like color representation.
Yeah, it didn't look exactly like on Game Boy Color.
No, it didn't.
So some titles took it even further. They took advantage of the hardware's extra power, offering better audio, adding a border around the game, or extra content. And some Game Boy titles that offered enhanced audio include Contra, The Alien Wars, Donkey Kong, Kirby's Dream Land 2, A Bug's Life, FIFA 98 Road to World Cup, Madden 97, and Animaniacs and Toy Story.
Oh, I didn't know that Animaniacs. I have Animaniacs on Game Boy. I did not know it was Super Game Boy Enhanced.
Yep. Yeah, enhanced with just the audio.
Okay.
Yeah, all those titles. I believe that's a complete list, as far as I could find. Okay. Of every Game Boy title that has enhanced audio on Super Game Boy.
At least North American releases.
Right. Yeah, I didn't get it. I didn't go that deep. Okay, so Mario Picross is a Game Boy title that included extra background sprites on the title screen. Okay. When played on Super Game Boy that aren't there for Game Boy. Space Invaders. This is the most interesting to me. Space Invaders on Game Boy included the SNES version of the game on the Game Boy cartridge.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this is interesting, and because Space Invaders is basically just a repeating arcade loop, the whole game, you could probably the ROM size fits on a Atari 2600 cartridge basically. So it's possible with Space Invaders. I don't believe this would be possible with pretty much almost any other game, except like maybe Tetris or something like that. But yeah, Space Invaders has the SNES ROM on the Game Boy cartridge. And when you launch it on the Super Game Boy, it loads up the Super NES version. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. Although, like, what if you just want to play the Game Boy version?
There might be an option. There might be a special way you need to boot it up or something. Okay. Yeah. Killer Instinct on Game Boy allowed its multiplayer feature, which worked with the Game Boy link cable. Okay. To work with a second SNES controller.
Oh, so you just plug two controllers in and play that way.
Exactly.
Without the need for a second.
And this was specially programmed. You know, this doesn't just work out of the box like that. They had to make it that way. which you otherwise would need a Game Boy link cable to do that. And this was also true of Wario Blast and Primal Rage on Game Boy. So Primal Rage is a fighting game. Yeah. So that's great.
Was Killer Instinct a fighting game?
I think
I know it's a fighting game series.
Yeah,
but I don't know if the Game Boy Color version. Well, yeah, if you're doing
it's the original Game Boy.
Okay.
This Game Boy Color games wouldn't work in this, I think.
Yeah, they did not work on the Super Game Boy.
In 1998, the Super Game Boy was followed up by the Super Game Boy 2. Oh, I also brought a visual aid.
Yes.
So this, you know what the North American one looks like, and I have that. But this is the Japanese Super Game Boy for
Super Famicom.
Super Famicom, yep. And that is the first one.
Okay.
But in 1998, the Super Game Boy was followed up by the Super Game Boy 2, like I said, which included a link cable port on the cartridge and was only released in Japan for the Super Famicom.
You know what I love? You can tell that this sat in someone's deck.
Yeah. Oh, all of that stuff yellows.
Yeah.
All weird. And anytime you've ever gone to like GameStop to buy like a Super Nintendo, they're all yellow.
But I love that this thing has a story.
Yeah.
Like, it was in the thing so long, and like it must have been near a window where the back of the unit was getting like light all the time.
All yellowed. And the front's all clear.
Yeah, the front looks pretty pristine, actually.
Yeah. If you look at a lot of Super Nintendo and Super Famicom cartridges, you'll notice it's always the back that's yellow and it's like perfectly separated.
Yeah.
And it's probably because you're right.
There is a concoction that retro gamers...
Really?
It's called Retro Bright.
Really? Okay.
And if you disassemble this and just take the plastic, you can like dunk it in this Retro Bright solution for, I don't know, an hour or two.
Gotcha.
And then the discoloration goes away.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Good to
so
know.
Something to look into if you're trying to restore any of your discolored stuff.
I have a lot of stuff from that era that's yellow. But yeah, so there was a follow-up to the Super Game Boy, and it had a link cable port.
Now, if I understand, that also still didn't do Game Boy Color. It still only did Game Boy.
That's correct. So, in the wider scope of this kind of conversion peripheral, expanded library peripheral is what I personally call them. That includes like e-reader and anything that expands the library of a console.
Okay.
This was preceded by the Wide Boy on the original Famicom. The Wide Boy and the Wide Boy 64 on Nintendo 64 were not retail peripherals. They were, well, in the case of the Wide Boy 64, it was $1,400, and it was only available to the press and to developers.
Yeah. Do you know who developed the Wide Boy?
No.
Intelligent Systems.
Oh, yeah, I did know that, actually, yeah. You're right. And it was...
Intelligent Systems does a lot of, like, dev work stuff.
Oh, really?
Too.
Like developer kits and
stuff.
The Wide Boys were capable of taking screenshots, and that was the big... And possibly capturing footage, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know like they were used by like Nintendo Power and other magazines to get screenshots in the games.
Right.
Yeah.
So those, I believe, are on the market. They've seen auctions
go for
and stuff.
Yeah,
I bet.
They're not like unheard of that you never see them, but they do pop up and they are expensive. I think especially the Wide Boy 64.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because that let you play Game Boy Advance games on Nintendo 64.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But on the retail side of things, on the commercial side of things, the official successor to this was the transfer pack. On that's what's listed as its successor.
By who?
By just
the retro gamers.
Yeah, retro gamers.
Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't do the same thing, and no one suggests it does.
Yeah, I mean, like, sure, using the transfer pack and, you know, Pokemon Stadium 2, you can play Game Boy and Game Boy Color games, but only Pokemon RPG Game Boy Color games.
There were others. Mario Golf...
that's true.
Did do some stuff with it,
but it didn't let you play the Game Boy Color game.
No.
Because you had the...
I think you unlocked a character or something like that.
Because Pokemon Stadium had the Game Boy Tower, which let you play your Pokemon game on the big screen, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then you could unlock Doduo in Dodrio mode,
right,
which would let you play the game at 2 times or 3 times speed.
That was through a 64 title. That wasn't through the transfer pack. You couldn't just plug in the transfer pack.
I remember trying that when I was a kid. Yeah. Like, can I play a different game on the Game Boy Tower?
Right.
Or I think what literally happened was, like, I think it dumped your game into the N64 game.
Yeah, I believe that well, no, because if you bump the transfer pack, it would freeze.
Because it wouldn't, like, transfer it back over to your...
Well, it must have been running something through the transfer pack. Because, if it took the ROM and then dumped it into the 64, it would be in memory or whatever.
Well, maybe the ROMs were, but your save. I feel like maybe it, like, imported your save from your Game Boy. And that's why if you bumped it, you'd be at whatever your save was last.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm saying that it must have been running the ROM off the cartridge.
Or just detected that there was no electrical input.
That's true. They could have had just like...
Maybe, who knows how they did it. I'm sure someone's done like a detailed analysis of how it worked.
That's not what we do. But, so that's the Super Game Boy, 30 years old. Happy birthday. And transmission.